Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ian Rassman, and I am your host today of the Medical Cannabis Speaker and Investor Pitch Competition. So I'd like to welcome you all that have joined us to hear from an exciting and experienced lineup of featured speakers who are joining us from different parts of the United States, such as New York, New Jersey, California, and Colorado, and also as far away as Bogota, Colombia. So the topic of today's event is federal legalization to insurance coverage, the impact of data and technology. So the speakers are going to speak for about 90 minutes, and we're going to follow that up with an investor pitch competition, which is going to be moderated by Mathew Nordgren, the CEO of the Arcadian Fund. And we'll all have the opportunity to watch 7 companies make presentations to an active group of cannabis investors and industry professionals. So just real briefly, the schedule is going to be this. From 1 o'clock until 2:25, we're going to hear from the speakers. From 2:30 until 4, we're going to have our investor pitch competition and investor judging. And then from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we're going to have a Zoom networking event where all of you can come in and ask questions of the investors, the judges, and the companies that are pitching and presenting today. So I have a few brief housekeeping items to cover very quickly here. So number 1, how to submit questions. For those of you that are new to Zoom, use the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and please make sure that you are chatting with all participants, sorry, all panelists and attendees, not that you're sending messages to just one person. So we are currently in a Zoom webinar right now, and at 4 o'clock, when it's time for the networking event, we're going to switch from this webinar to a Zoom room meeting where you're all going to have that opportunity to interact with everybody. And we're going to post this link in the chat room, and it's going to be pretty seamless. You're going to click on that and transfer over to that Zoom room. So after the final presentation, you're also going to be presented with a pop-up window where you'll be able to vote on your favorite presenting company. So we have a distinguished panel of judges that are also going to be voting. So there are exceptional opportunities in the global cannabis, medical cannabis, hemp, and CBD markets, and investors are strategically investing for return on their investment. Some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today are current impact on utilizing data and technology to achieve federal legalization and remove cannabis from Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act. Also investing in technology, strategies to strengthen cannabis efficacy, technology and data to track the medical cannabis, the FDA's role in regulating marijuana as a potential prescription drug, federal funding for opioid programs, banking regulations and their impact on growth, progress for health and medical insurance, cannabis coverage, and the social impact of investing in the United States in this global opioid crisis. So first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and my involvement with the cannabis industry. So very briefly, I'm an inventor, a patent holder, and a lifelong entrepreneur with over 29 years experience in technology, startups, and senior management. I've worked in dozens of countries, including forming my own European consulting company to do CRM and SFA with large multinational corporations. My international experience led to a senior management role at the 2002 Winter Olympics, overseeing a diverse staff of 325 persons to streamline those event services. And I have since held roles at senior technology startups as well as well-established publicly traded companies. My focus has been on payment systems and the emerging new markets, and that led me to a senior operations role at a fintech startup where I cultivated strategic partnerships in the banking world. I facilitated a unique payment networking comprised of merchant services, online money transfers, and things like that. So I'm also a cannabis advocate with the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML. So I'm very active in this organization. I hold the role of Deputy Director of Los Angeles NORML, and I'm also the Secretary with Orange County NORML. And I currently specialize in compliant banking and payment solutions servicing both traditional merchants outside of cannabis, but also serving the regulated cannabis industry and providing onshore compliant financial solutions for cannabis-related businesses. And this is through my company, Chosen Payments. So I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Mathew Nordgren. Mr. Nordgren is currently CEO and founder of Arcadian Fund and Arcadian Capital Management. It's a venture fund focused that invests in ancillary businesses in and around cannabis and hemp industries, and more specifically on Series A type opportunities where proven businesses are looking for growth equity to track and win new markets. Mathew was recently named one of the top 100 most influential people in the cannabis industry by High Times Magazine. He's the founder of the Leadership Foundation for Inner City Youth, and much of his time is donated for Gilda's Club Cancer Charity, the March of Dimes, the Livestrong Foundation, Boys and Girls Club, Young Republicans, and Diamond Empowerment Fund for building schools in Africa. He's very involved in athletics and academics, first person in NCAA University of Texas football history to graduate with 2 degrees in 3.5 years while maintaining high honors and achieving the Dean's List standards while lettering in football. After all of this, Matt pursued a graduate level degree for the remaining years under scholarship, resulting in 2 separate MBA degrees in business and sports management. Mathew then went on to sign a 3-year contract with the Philadelphia Eagles football franchise after his college Texas Longhorns won the national championship of 2006. So Mathew, thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to turn it over to you.
Haven't heard a lot of that in a while. Thank you, Ian. That's, you know, I forget a lot of that, and glad to be here with everybody, especially Brad Turner. I want to give a shout out to, who's been a phenomenal advocate for us over the years in this industry. And Brad, congrats for putting this together. It's a really great thing you're doing, and we need community now more than ever. The good news is that this cannabis community is about the strongest community I've ever been involved with. You sort of get this feeling that there's this human element that's connecting all of us, and we're driven by something that's really, you know, phenomenal to watch. And during this time, to see all these entrepreneurs and how battle tested and ready and excited they all are is encouraging as an asset manager. Again, my name is Matt Nordgren. Thank you for the background. Arcadian Capital and Arcadian Fund is the name of our firm. And essentially, we come at this as a you know, sort of a growth equity investor, and we're looking for growth equity opportunities. Today, we're somewhere around 35 companies that we're involved with, and I hope some of that can help provide some information that would be helpful for the community and the people in the audience watching today. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about the data. We have a lot of supply chain companies in our fund, and most of our companies are in that sort of B2B ancillary focused supply chain, and the data that you find there is quite fascinating, as data always is. But I would like to kind of paint a picture for everybody watching what has happened in our mind from data that we've been able to see, both from the medical side and the recreational side. Pre-pandemic, we want to talk about during pandemic, we want to talk about our thoughts afterwards. What do we expect post-pandemic from the data standpoint? And we're going to wear the investor hat. That's really the perspective we're going to come at this with. And so hopefully that's helpful. But what we noticed before the pandemic, a lot of folks talked about the recorrection and public market value that was happening. People talked about the vape crisis. There was all these sort of variables that happened in 2019 that one might think the industry didn't do that well. Actually, according to BDS Analytics, what we see is 36% macro level compound annual growth numbers throughout 2019. And the previous years before that were similar, 30-ish% growth. And so going into this pandemic, you had a lot of these situations that forced entrepreneurs to be ready for the moment. You had growth, you had 36% growth. I mean, so macro level, you're generating real cash growth. And at the same time, leading up into the pandemic, you had companies focusing on getting to profitability. No longer was it about this growth, crazy growth, crazy growth. It was really about profitability and running a lean business and really hunkering down and knowing that that type of growth is enough to run a great business. We didn't have to outpace ourselves. So going into the pandemic, you had to actually be pretty confident. You had to be confident in these entrepreneurs. You had to be confident in these public market values. You had to be sort of confident. There's been a few ups and downs, and there's been, you know, confidence in weathering those storms. So you feel pretty good going in. Then what you see happening in the pandemic is the first few weeks, you had a major uptick in sales. And largely, we think that may have been pantry loading. CDC says, load up on your medicines, 3 times more medicine. So there was a lot of that happening early on that was fascinating. But then we started to track some of the movements from the data throughout the pandemic. And what we noticed was a little bit of a leveling off after that first 2, 3, 4 weeks of excessive purchasing. And then I think we moved into sort of a period where we were going to watch what the data told us. And what we saw, and one of our other companies that we're involved with by way of an acquisition is called Arcadian, wonderful company. They put out a report, and then we started following through our other technology channels to verify this. But what we noticed was that a stimulus package hit, and that was a direct cause and effect in terms of purchasing for the industry, both medical and recreational. So that was encouraging. And then on top of that, you then had 420. And so now all of a sudden, you get another uptick in purchasing. So this data is phenomenal that we're seeing throughout the entire pandemic thus far. And so it's highly encouraging. Then I think you have to look within the purchasing habits, and although sales have been good, some places different rules have rolled out in terms of delivery, in terms of curbside pickup, in terms of all sorts of variables. If you look at Massachusetts, Vegas, California, very different. So I'm speaking a little more macro in terms of recreational and medical. But you look at those numbers, and all of a sudden you notice that not only has sales increased and leveled and increased and leveled and not really been too low, you see that the purchases from a basket standpoint is up 25, 15, 20% in different markets. What does that tell you? That tells you that the consumer behavior patterns are starting to change a little bit. And it's starting to tell you that, these demographics that we noticed that purchased in certain ways in certain geographic regions, now we're starting to change and develop a little bit. You had somebody that was buying a night tincture to help sleep, or something for their knees or their pets or their wife or their kids. And you see all this experimentation in terms of brand categories, different medicines to help them, sort of live a better life. And so I think what ends up happening is, after the pandemic, I think you can expect an increase in consumer behavior in very different ways all throughout the product categories. And so with the increase in purchasing, we're going to be closely paying attention to how does that translate? Do you see that same demographic type of an individual in a certain geographic region continue to purchase in that same way? Did they try something that helped them sleep that they didn't before? Does that then become a consumer for life? And so post-pandemic, I think we have a lot to see, but we have a lot to be excited about. If you compare this to other industries, going into the pandemic, the nice thing is that we didn't have the ability to generate revenue in a commercial way, in a public social way. And so you didn't really lose that. In the case of alcohol, as a comparison, which, we're really here for medical cannabis, and but alcohol is a comparison for recession-proof businesses. The pandemic is a very different scenario. And so what we noticed was, although alcohol still sells pretty well direct to consumer and through a retail environment, you end up losing a lot of places that they generate revenue. I think I've seen numbers 60 to 80% because they don't have events and restaurants and bars and everything else. Cannabis didn't have to lose any of that because we didn't have that anyways. And then post-pandemic, what you think about comparing our industry to other industries, if you look at industries that have done well through the pandemic, Zoom, esports, online meetings, those will be something consumers have more experience with, and to a large degree will continue to use, but they have another option. They can take a real meeting. You can go to a real sporting event. So there's going to be some attrition in terms of consumer behavior patterns. In our industry, they can't go anywhere else and consume. And so I think we're one of the few industries that had that type of growth going in, has this many consumer dynamics happening throughout in a positive way. And then post, we don't have to worry about people going anywhere else because you need a license to conduct business today. So we're very, very encouraged by the data that we're seeing. We think that that's going to also arm all the wonderful people out there that do work in our industry in different ways, from a lobbying standpoint, from an ESG standpoint, and from a grass tops economic standpoint. The business essential tag and how well this has performed is going to change everything. I can't tell you how many of my fellow peers in the industry are so excited to get back in front of people that they have been arguing for more for our industry, and how excited they are to have that tool in their tool belt. And so I think on top of that, lastly, I'll mention that, you know, we're expecting the industry to continue to generate support from the institutional class. That's the thing we're missing right now. And if you're an entrepreneur out there, just know people like us work for you. We can't do anything without you. The more you do what you're doing, the better the case you make for us to go convince these large family offices, these large institutional players, that during a time of crisis, when a business is essential and people are looking for ways to put money to work, don't forget the longest bull run in history, right? So people have had money on the side. Where do you put it now? 60 to 70% of the asset classes that were stable before are unstable today. And they're looking for places to lean in where there's cash flow, there's assets, there's demand, and real growth opportunities, especially from the alternative class, because that's where you can make up some yield to offset some of your more traditional portfolio. So entrepreneurs, we're fighting for you. You've given us more to fight about than ever. We're going to go out there as asset managers. We're going to make this case for you. I can tell you it's getting much better. It's getting a lot better, especially in America. A lot of money wants to be here. This is a high growth space. So I'm encouraged over the last few weeks about the type of support that we're seeing from large family offices and institutional support, that this industry matters, and that this industry is a place that they want to put resources. And, you know, I'm just so thankful to be a part of this panel with all the other wonderful industry leaders here. We're admirers of yours. We want to serve everybody who's on this panel throughout, because we're going to come back in and we're going to host the second half. And I think will be fun. If you're watching now and you're not planning on watching at the end, I'd highly encourage you to watch the second half. It'll flow really nicely. It'll be a lot of the other panelists are really good friends and people we've done a lot of business with. And I think you'll enjoy seeing some of that dynamic. We'll push some people in some certain ways. We'll get to analyze a few new opportunities. But overall, you know, thankful to be here. Arcadian, you know, is thankful and humbled to be in the position we are as an asset manager. And we're encouraged by all the founders and all the great people out there building these businesses. Ian, thank you for having me, and we'll circle back here in a little bit.
Thank you so much, Mathew. Hey, so we do have a question coming to us from Stanley Atkins in Georgia. So Stanley asks, Georgia is currently expanding into the medical market. What are some ways that we can attain some of this data to present to our commission as well as our legislators? Oh, you're muted, Mathew. Hold on just a sec.
Oh, hey.
Okay.
That would be helpful. It's a great question. There's a number of organizations that do wonderful work. I would suggest Marijuana Policy Project, MPP. Stephen Hawkins over there is wonderful. They've got a great organization. They've been doing this work since the beginning, 25 years or something. And so they're there for you. They want to talk to people. They've been able to be on the forefront of policy initiatives that have taken place in every state. So they know what kind of has worked and what hasn't. Specific for Georgia, you know, I think you're a little bit earlier in regards to some of the conversations that have to happen, but MPP would be a great place to go for that. At Arcadian, if you want to write us, I will provide a number of things that I think could be helpful. info@arcadianfund.com or our website. But anybody out there who has a question like that, that says, how do I advance the entire industry in my way, in my state, in my city, in my industry, in my product category, this industry is here to support you. And so we'll do anything we can to follow up on that, and any other questions that may come up, feel free to contact us directly and we can point you in a direction.
Thank you. We have about 2 more minutes left here for some questions, Mathew. So another question from Michael Howard. Mathew, what types of cannabis companies are you looking to add to your portfolio at this time?
It's a great question, Michael. We try to build an ecosystem, you know, and right now with 35 or so companies in our various funds and vehicles, it gives us a really nice opportunity to look throughout the entire supply chain and have a great macro level understanding of what we're missing. And so we really look at what we can sort of add to our ecosystem. But I would say in general, I like growth equity. We want to see companies that have a good thing going, and then we want to help add that jet fuel to take them to the next level. But Michael, it's kind of relative to the industry. I got to tell you, right now, there's a lot of opportunity across pretty much every asset class. And so you're looking at things and deciding where you can devote your time and attention. And in a lot of ways, it becomes further up the value chain. And so I think you'll work backwards from there. You're trying to get the debt and credit stuff figured out first with some of these bigger, larger players, and then kind of some of the later stage growth equity will get done. You know, unfortunately, a lot of the earlier stage, seed stage stuff is going to be tough. It's going to be tough for people to raise some capital there. There are some funds specifically set up in the industry for that, which we can refer some of those companies to. But I think a lot of the funds who have been around a little while are kind of moving up the value chain and working their way down in terms of business opportunities that have a lot of data, a lot of meat there that you can kind of chomp through.
Fantastic. Matt, honestly, there are so many questions pouring in on the chat channel for you, but I'd like you to just close out real quickly here in less than 30 seconds. How can people contact you? And then if you don't mind, please going into the chat and answering some of the there's a lot of great questions popping up, and we're just not going to get to them all here before the next speaker. So how can people contact you? And then please go into the chat, and everybody's anxious to chat with you.
Oh, well, we're anxious to chat with everybody too. We believe every conversation is worth having because you never know in this early of an industry where those things might go. So I think I'd like to wrap with encouraging everybody to be collaborative. Okay, this is so big. This is so big. And we're closer than we've ever been. Work together. As long as you work together, and we will be all a part of that energy and that spirit. If you reach out to us, whether it be on LinkedIn or go to our website, arcadianfund.com, you can contact us there. We will get back to you. We will get back to everybody because in this industry, we get a chance to build something right from the beginning. And it starts from the bottom to the top and reverse from the top to the bottom, which is we care about the environment. We care about the people building businesses. We care about female empowerment. We care about minority lives. We care about sustainability. We care about each other. This is going to be big. If you want to be a part of it, hold hands with someone you respect that's in the space and go do it together. And if we all did that, I promise you, we're going to get there. Just don't do it on your own. Please reach out to us, arcadianfund.com. We'll circle back in a little bit and try to keep you inspired and fired up about what we are seeing. It's a brief glimpse at it, but a lot of smart people today to tell you some other perspectives that we hope are helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Mathew. I know you're sticking around to answer questions, and we're going to see you a little bit later on in the presentation room, right here when we start the presentation. So very quickly, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Miss Elaine. She's the CEO and founder of MyCureAll. She is a highly seasoned pharmacist and healthcare professional that has held leadership roles in 3 Fortune 500 companies that include Rite Aid, Walgreens, and CVS Caremark. She is a graduate of Long Island University School of Pharmacy and has been a licensed pharmacist in New Jersey and Florida for over 20 years. She is dedicated to providing quality patient care and ensuring improved clinical outcomes. In her 20+ years as a pharmacist, she has seen tens of thousands of patients for dozens of different conditions. And as a pharmacist, she always strives to help patients make their lives happier, healthier, and ease their burdens. Addiction is a tough illness, and she feels honored to help the patients on their road to recovery. At her company, MyCureAll, her mission is to optimize innovation to treat pain properly while preventing addiction at its core and ensure improved clinical outcomes. She has successfully trained and managed diverse teams of pharmacists and has in-depth experience in all aspects of the pharmacy benefit managers industry that companies manage prescription drug benefits on behalf of health insurers, Medicare Part D drug plans, large employers, and other payers. So Elaine, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this wonderful introduction. Thank you, Mathew. Definitely a hard act to follow. Brad, thank you very much for putting this all together. I know it was a lot of work and we really greatly appreciate that. So hello everybody, my name is Elaine Richer and I am co-founder and CEO of MyCureAll. My company has built an ecosystem to navigate the medicinal cannabis world. We call it the MyCureAll app, and it really arose from our desire to fight the opioid epidemic. Let me just see if I can share my screen with you guys. Nope, not working. Okay, so I'll continue. So as a high school student growing up in Brooklyn, I always knew that my future will be in healthcare. I always loved helping people, and I decided to become a pharmacist. I went to graduate from Long Island University on the Brooklyn campus, so it's always Brooklyn. Don't ever remember learning anything about the endocannabinoid system at all. In my world, cannabis was always considered to be an illicit drug, as illicit as heroin or cocaine. And all I knew that what I learned from the news, so what I saw in Greenwich Village when I went there with my friends. During my last year in pharmacy school, I was completing rotation in St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital. It was at the height of the opioid epidemic. And this was really the first time in my life when I saw people that really should have been dead because the CD4 counts were at 0, leaving the hospital for a fix, and then coming back for lunch. It was also the first time that I saw sick people afflicted with substance use disorder, not being treated like human beings, but really like junkies. The lack of empathy from healthcare professionals was really profound. When I became a practicing pharmacist, I was really shocked by how many patients needed prescription painkillers just to get through the day. OxyContin was heavily promoted by sales reps, and deep discounts were given to pharmacy owners on multi-bottle purchases. Looking back really at the late 90s and how freely OxyContin was being prescribed by physicians for any ailment, it's really no surprise where we ended up as a society today. Over a short period of time, a patient would start coming back at a rate inconsistent with their prescription refills, even for medications advertised by drug companies as non-addictive, such as tramadol. As a pharmacist, at the end of the day, you see how addictive a non-addictive medication is, because the patient would come in for their refill a few days early, and then a few days earlier. First, they needed their medication 2 or 3 times a day. Now they need it 4 times a day, and now they're going up to 7 or 8 pills per day. That really sneaks up on that unsuspecting patient until one day they cannot function without the painkiller to get through the day. And as was mentioned before, I really started in pharmacy school because I wanted to help people. And unfortunately, what I didn't realize that this was a time when I was witnessing the start of the opioid epidemic. I stayed in retail pharmacy for another 18 years. Spending most of my career as a district manager in CVS, Rite Aid, finally Walgreens. I saw insurance companies covering OxyContin scripts one after another. And it really was that opioid epidemic that pushed my interest into medicinal cannabis. States with medical cannabis laws showed an annual decrease in death from opioid overdoses by 25%. Versus the states without medical cannabis laws. So it really was a wake-up call for me that medical cannabis was clearly a solution for the epidemic that plagued our society. However, when you start looking at the current method of prescribing or recommending, it really is inadequate. So that's the reason why we developed our MyCureAll app, because it's really a platform for targeted cannabis recommendations for strains that treat particular conditions, as well as lower healthcare costs. So now we arrive at the main point, is if the patient is being treated by cannabis, why shouldn't it be covered by insurance? It is a lot less expensive than opioids, but if the insurance has a $10 copay on OxyContin, which really costs thousands of dollars, why shouldn't they be covering medical cannabis for the patient? Medical cannabis is a life-changing medication, and for many, it's a life-saving medication. However, it is too expensive, specifically on the East Coast, for many people to afford. So this is how I got involved. I got into healthcare because I wanted to help, and I started looking at cannabis as an effective way to help those with opioid addiction. As I started looking at research, I was shocked about everything I learned regarding the history of cannabis and cannabis prohibition in the United States. Cannabis has been used as a medicine for many ailments since 2700 BC in China, and it was considered one of the 5 sacred plants in India. It was recognized as the single most important of 10,000 plants and was used to treat glaucoma, inflammation, leprosy, edema, gout, malaria, earaches, diarrhea, vomiting, migraines, just to name a few. It was even used by Chinese surgeons as a surgical anesthetic. As time progressed, cannabis was used as a medicine all over the world for a variety of conditions. And I really believe that medical research clearly supports its use today. So although opioids are commonly prescribed for chronic pain, medical cannabis is becoming a popular alternative for patients who do not want to take opioids or cannot tolerate them. Studies show that medical cannabis is effective for pain. In combination with opioids, medical cannabis can enhance the pain relief and lower the incidence of side effects and overdoses from opioids. Patients are often able to lower their opioid dosing or taper and discontinue it completely. As a clinician, I believe the treatment community should provide a variety of opioid replacement therapies that should include medicinal cannabis, which will ultimately improve patient-centered treatment, preserve the integrity of the family, and empower patients to become a vital and active part of their community. So going back to why I started MyCureAll, it really provides a platform for targeted cannabis recommendation. It enables patients, physicians, dispensaries, and insurance companies to work hand in hand to achieve a natural solution to a plethora of different conditions. Our app designs and generates treatment plan that produces a statistical reduction in symptomatology. So at this point, if you weren't convinced previously that cannabis is medicine, I'm sure I've convinced you already. So I wanted to get back a little bit to the insurance coverage. We all know that many insurance plans do cover cannabis as an alternative treatment without really stating that they're covering cannabis. Now, certain legislations have been passed in states to actually have cannabis reimbursement in workers' compensation cases. So as recent as February, New Jersey court commanded cannabis reimbursement in workers' comp case. In a case of first impression, the New Jersey Appellate Division determined that employers in the state must reimburse employees for medical cannabis following a workplace accident, despite federal prohibition against cannabis distribution. This may signal a fresh judicial focus on the scope of lawful medical cannabis use in the employment context, both in New Jersey and states with other similar laws. At the very least, employers in the other states that have legalized medical cannabis but have yet to rule on the interplay between the Controlled Substance Act, which is commonly known as CSA, and state law in workers' compensation disputes should also take note in the event that similar reimbursement requests arise. To date, only 3 states, including New Jersey, have considered whether the CSA, the Controlled Substance Act, preempts state law legalizing medical cannabis in connection with the workers' compensation reimbursement obligations. Through this ruling, New Jersey joined New Mexico in holding up that the CAA does not preempt state medical cannabis laws. Unfortunately, Maine, by contrast, reached the opposite conclusion in 2018. So those are the 3 states that so far have reached any conclusion. We really hope that this last New Jersey case will pave the way to a broader workers' compensation coverage and therefore full insurance coverage. Ian, I'm kind of good, more or less.
Thank you. So we have about 60 seconds left here before we jump to the next speaker. So if you could, I have one question from the audience here, and then if you can answer that briefly and then follow up with how best to contact you. So the question from Alex Rice Corey is, what educational tools, methods, or resources do you have to nudge patients towards healthy use versus overuse?
Well, actually,
beyond prescribing for
right.
single conditions, of course.
So we actually put together 357 studies from which we decide what strain and dosing a patient should use specifically. And we recommend it depending on the patient condition. So it's something called CannaMeasure. We're sure we'll be able to get to it during our pitch event as well. But it is medical. It is based on a lot of studies and a lot of information.
Thank you so much. The best way for everybody to contact you?
My email, ericher@mycureall.com. LinkedIn, Elaine Richer. Very easy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us here today as a speaker. And we're going to see you in a little bit in the investor pitch competition.
Thank you.
So next, I'd like to introduce you to Elisabeth Mack. She's an RN, a BSN, has an MBA, and she's the founder of Holistic Caring. I'm proud to let you know that she's my personal friend. And also on the board of directors with me at Los Angeles NORML as our director of health and wellness. So a little bit about Elisabeth. She founded Holistic Caring in 2016 to bridge the gap between traditional and cannabis medicine through education, guidance, and supportive care for patients with product choices, dosages, interactions, and timing. Elisabeth is an educational provider for the California Board of Registered Nursing and professionalizes medical cannabis by equipping healthcare providers to have these conversations with patients and to approach cannabis by emphasizing holistic and functional medicine. Elisabeth's background includes a decade in hospitals where she specialized in psychiatry, diabetes, and medical units. Elisabeth spent 20 years prior to Holistic Caring in operations and sales management of several health insurance carriers, RSM of Anthem Blue Cross until 2015. And she believes cannabinoid medicines offer a chance at healing, comfort, and wholeness in a more holistic, economical, and empowering way. Elisabeth earned an MBA in Healthcare Administration and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. She's a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians and on the board of American Cannabis Nurses Association, and proud to say that she's also on the board of directors with Los Angeles NORML. So, Elisabeth.
Thank you very much, and hopefully you can all hear me. Yeah, thank you for that warm introduction. I am Elisabeth, and I'm here to make the clinical case for cannabis and talk about how I can integrate this into programs for my patients and yours, hopefully. So my company, Holistic Caring, I'm building the Holistic Caring Network, and as you've learned, I have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. And my first 10 years I spent in patient care in hospitals. Born and raised in Chicago, came out to San Diego 30 years ago as a traveling nurse and never went back. It's beautiful here. And, but I knew taking care of patients in the hospital wasn't necessarily where I needed to be because I see things from a systems level. I see things from a perspective of what needs to be taken away, what needs to be added, how can we improve things, and that sort of thing. So I did spend 20 years in insurance carriers. My first few was in clinical operations, working with IPAs and medical management, case management, and then shifted over to government programs, Medicaid operations, helped HealthNet start the children's health insurance programs, switched over to commercial lines where I ended up going into sales and using my skills with employee benefits and working in the county of San Diego to run the sales programs for Anthem Blue Cross in my last few years. But so what happened to me is I had a bike crash at the end of 2014, went out on leave to have surgery and ended up finding cannabis at my chiropractor's office, where the therapist there was using CBD in the oil, and it smelled funny. And I said, "What is this?" And she goes, "It's cannabis." And I said, "I don't want that." And she goes, "Don't worry about it. It's only CBD, and it's going to help heal your inflammation in that shoulder and give you a pain reduction, decrease the soreness, and you'll heal faster." So I said, "Okay, tell me more." Before the end of that hour, I wanted to learn everything I could about the endocannabinoid system. So I went home, started Googling everything, started reading, went to the library, got all the books I could, and started meeting with her and her boyfriend, who had a pop-up dispensary in PV, and started taking high doses of CBD, microdosing THC, learning about this plant and applying it to myself. And so I discovered that, I wanted to find a better way to serve than to make money for an insurance company. So I ended up working with them for a little while, but then in January of 2016, I went to the Women Grow National Conference in Denver, found all of these beautiful people making medicines and selling medicines, but nobody is really sitting down and interpreting them for patients and teaching patients how to use them. I'm kind of an autodidactic learner. I can teach myself, but a lot of people don't want to do that. They want somebody to guide them and show them. So that's why in 2016, in May, I founded Holistic Caring to really bridge that gap between traditional and cannabis medicine, and to give people the emphasis on healing and wholeness and how to practicalize this. And as Ian alluded to, I'm on the board of the American Cannabis Nurses Association, serving as treasurer and director of health with him in LA NORML. So why do this? America's in distress. It's not a minute too soon to start talking about cannabis as one of the solutions. 1 out of 2 of us have some condition of chronic pain as an adult. And 1 out of 4 struggle with mental health conditions, PTSD and anxiety, which almost all of us have at this point with COVID. So many people have an autoimmune condition, neurological imbalances that cannabinoids can be a great hitch for in fine-tuning that ECS. 50 million of us are having trouble sleeping. And essentially, traditional healthcare is not really solving this problem. We're spending $3.5 trillion in healthcare expenditures annually, but we still rank 40s in outcomes and quality of life issues across the world. We're not doing that well. And as most of us are trying to figure this out and wrap our heads around it, healthcare right now is self-care. And the more that we can do to enhance our own health and healing is in our favor. So why isn't cannabis an option? Why are we not talking about this? If you look at this book, The Health Effects of Cannabis and Cannabinoids, in 2017, the NIH, National Academy of Science and Engineering, published an exhaustive literature review saying that there is conclusive evidence that cannabis can mitigate chronic pain and chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting and other conditions that they're a little squirrely on. But why aren't we using this? Because A, it's a Schedule 1. But B, in the medical states, we have issues as far as implementation on a medical level. And I call this the 4 Ds that are really in the way. There's a disconnect between the medical patients that are really sick and hurting and their providers of care and the dispensaries and the medications themselves. There's distrust. People don't really know about the safety, the quality, and the efficacy of these cannabis medicines, of CBD, and then the industry themselves. Can I trust these people? Are they thugs? It's still a little bit of a rough go for some people going through metal detectors to get into a store. It's disorganized. Although we have 33 legal medical states, we still don't have any kind of standardization. It really is kind of the wild, wild west. And for patients, that's a difficult approach. And then dosing. Fine-tuning is really needed with clinical care to maximize the results. If patients are going to use this as a therapeutic option, they need to know that it's reliable, safe, standardized, and that they can approach this with some guidance and help. So I built what I call the 4 Ps of holistic caring. And the first is process and professionalization. Bringing process and programs in to integrate this into healthcare and to put it side by side with what the patients are doing now. Providers need inclusion. They need a curriculum to support them to talk about this inpatient care and some mentoring in how to incorporate this into their business. Starting with the holistic providers, chiropractors, acupuncturists, naturopaths, the folks that aren't necessarily writing those DEA prescriptions right now, but then they'll follow as well. But building the system and then giving them products that they are able to have safe, vetted CBD that they can talk about with their patients and focus THC ratios and understanding how to use those to comfort and heal these chronic conditions. And then the patients, they need personalized care through services and programs and ways to empower them to understand that they really are in the driver's seat, but that they're not alone. And what I always tell patients is that I'm going to help them maximize the benefits, minimize the harms of this plant so that it can be effective. And, you know, again, it's not a minute too soon, but when people say, who is cannabis medicine for? There's 7 billion of us on the planet, and we all have an ECS. We can all respond to this, and it really is something that's individualized, but with patience and practice and perseverance, we can dial this in. You know, when I crashed my bike, I had a dozen different medicines 5 years ago, and today I can say I haven't had a pill, and I didn't have one yesterday or the day before. And my goal is to give all of these people that kind of freedom. So I'm going to continue to make the clinical case for cannabis. This is one of my lovely patients I got off of methadone with a weaning program. And on the right, I'm speaking last summer to the National Association of Health Underwriters here in San Diego when they had their annual conference. And because I'm one of them and spent 20 years in those rooms as an attendee, now they're listening to me as I say, you know, let's talk about the cost-benefit analysis of cannabis as medicine. And I implore you to try and find some self-insured employer groups where we could do a demonstration project and say, let's give every one of those 100 employees 50 milligrams of CBD a day and employer-sponsored, and then see if we can track the utilization of pharmaceuticals and which ones fall off. Medicines for pain, anxiety, blood pressure, depression, disordered thinking, some of the other things that we know that we can save money and improve quality of life. So, you know, I've been building this ecosystem of care. You know, Holistic Caring cut our teeth with direct patient services, but next Monday on June 1st, I'm launching a licensing program for cannabis health coaches, where they're gonna go through a full 8-hour plus curriculum, live and online. I wanted to start it live, but now I've retooled and put everything online. And I'm really, really proud of how that's going to turn out. But they also get a toolkit where they have assessment forms and patient teaching and care plans that they can give to the patients, as well as the community one-on-one presentation. Give them the access to a marketplace, dispensary and educator training, condition care programs for patients, cannabis and cancer, cannabis and chronic pain, neurological, neurodegenerative, mental health, autoimmune, and how to use cannabis successfully, and then consulting services and books, because I just launched a book, which I'm very proud of. You can buy it on my website or Amazon. And so I've been busy trying to really medicalize this and do my part. You can contact me, Elisabeth at holisticcaring.com, and then visit the website at holisticcaring.com. So thank you very much so much for your attention. And contact me to collaborate on anything further.
Hey, Elisabeth, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. We're right at the end of the time of your spot here, but there's a ton of questions popping up for you in the chat window. So I'd love it if you could jump in there and start answering some questions for people. You're very popular here. So thank you so much for your time. Okay, so I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker. I'd like to introduce you to Tracy Ryan. She's the founder of CannaKids and CKSoul. Tracy and I are friends, but more important than that, our daughters are friends. And let me tell you a little bit about Tracy and her daughter. So Tracy's the founder and lead consultant for CannaKids and CKSoul, a California-based cooperative with a focus on supplying medical cannabis oil to adults and children looking for holistic relief for serious health conditions, specializing in pediatric cancer. Since her infant daughter's brain tumor diagnosis in June of 2013, Tracy has dedicated a huge part of her life to educating herself on the medicinal powers of medical marijuana in treating her own daughter's disease, as well as other pediatric and adult cancers, epilepsy, autism, and beyond. Tracy has worked on a global scale with families who are seeking education and treatment options for their loved ones, and has guided many patients to unheard of success. CannaKids is now on a trajectory to become one of the world's leaders for cannabinoid therapies based on scientific research, and is in collaboration with some of the top researchers, doctors, and hospitals in the world. With a true passion for clinical research, Tracy has partnered with and is on the advisory board of Cure Pharmaceuticals, a leading disruptive drug delivery technology and pharmaceutical pharmaceutical cannabinoid molecule development company, and the Technion Institute in Israel, who's leading the way in new cannabis research for cancer. CannaKids has been sharing their meticulously tracked patient data with Technion in order to help further assist in their research. Furthermore, CannaKids and Cure are finding the next 4 years of this research where both pediatric and adult cancers will be studied for cannabinoid sensitivity. In addition to this research, CannaKids is in the planning phase with a major hospital in California and is expected to start in-hospital clinical trials on pediatric patients in the next year. As a public speaker, Tracy can be found speaking at medical cannabis and pediatric cancer events all over the world in her quest to educate the mass public on the power of this incredible plant. Tracy and her family have been featured in many national and international news pieces, including National Geographic, Vice News, Entertainment Tonight, Fox Business, The Huffington Post, CNN, Telemundo, Netflix, and many more. They are also the key focus of the Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein documentary, Weed the People, which is on Netflix. Very pleased to introduce Tracy, Ryan. As I said, our daughters are within 6 months age of each other and they're little besties. They run their own little Zoom meetings independently. So Tracy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ian. I have to tell you, watching those girls become friends over the last year has been the most adorable thing. So thank you for sharing your child with me as I continue to share mine with you. And thank you to Brad and the whole group for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. For those of you who haven't heard my story before, I know Ian gave a very detailed kind of rundown of what we've been going through over the last 7 years now since we first started CannaKids, which began as a secret group on social media. We're now called CKSoul. We've rebranded. We've had a lot of challenges with the name kids in this new legal climate. So we've had to make a slight pivot. Formulations are still basically the same. We still have the same, types of products. And now it's just a new packaging. And now it's there for all to enjoy instead of it people, thinking it's just for children, even though that's still clearly where my heart is. And the reason that my heart is so immersed in children is because, as Ian mentioned, what I've had to go through with my own little girl over the last 7.5 years. She was born perfectly healthy. She was the most adorable, incredibly chunky baby. And then at 8.5 months old, she was diagnosed with a low-grade brain tumor, which is really what set us on our path to medical cannabis. And it's a long story that I'm usually pretty good at keeping pretty short because I really want to talk to you mostly about what we're doing in the research sector today. It's very timely with everything that's going on with COVID, with where we are with cancer research and so forth. So I'll try not to spend too much time leading up to the story, just for those of you who haven't heard me speak before. So, when Sophie was diagnosed, it was within really a matter of days that we were connected to Ricky Lake, the movie star and talk show host that people of my generation and beyond have come to love and know over the years. And it was this documentary, which Ian mentioned, Weed the People, that's on Netflix, that really got us into cannabis. We originally thought that it was absolutely ridiculous to think about giving a child cannabis, much less a baby who was only 8.5 months old. But when we started looking at all the research that was already out there over 7 years ago, it was clear to us that there was something the government wasn't telling us. There was information that was being withheld from us. And there have even been hundreds and hundreds of studies that showed cannabis to be something positive to use for cancer specifically that have disappeared off of sites like PubMed, which you can see, in situations of in our documentary, especially like around breast cancer, that's heavily spoken about in one of the scenes. And it was our decision alongside Sophie's doctors who, believe it or not, 7 years ago said, okay, we're totally fine with this. We don't see any reason why this could be super harmful to her, especially more harmful than what chemo is. We brought them the research. We came in armed with education, which is important. And just, touching on that briefly, for those of you who are sick or are caring for someone who's sick, I get asked the question a lot, what do you do in order to overcome the stigma of this plant that still exists today, unfortunately? And it's education. That's always my first answer. Just make sure that you're armed with the information that you need in order to really understand this plant, understand how it works within the body, within the endocannabinoid system, understand the research that is out there and available to you, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of published research articles that you can find by doing a simple Google search. Let's say you have breast cancer, just type in breast cancer and cannabis. If you have PTSD and cannabis, and so forth and so on. And you can find all kinds of information in articles. And really understanding the therapeutic benefits of this plant is also very powerful when you can walk into your doctor's office and say, you know what, there hasn't been human trials done yet for cancer, but we know that this is an incredible immune system stimulant. We do have research showing that. We have animal model trials showing that it's killing cancer in mice. We know that this is something that can help with nausea. It can help stimulate appetite. All of those things are crucial when you have a cancer diagnosis to staying healthy. If you can keep eating and eating healthy, and you can keep weight on you, and you can keep from vomiting all the time, if you can sleep good at night, if you can quell the anxiety and the stress and the really bad thoughts, honestly, that come along with cancer that can also be debilitating to your immune system, because stress causes inflammation, and inflammation leads to a broken immune system. Broken immune system leads to all kinds of trouble, cancer being one of them. Then that alone should be enough in your arsenal to go into a doctor and say, this is why I want to try this. And that's what we did with Sophie is we made sure that we knew at the time what information was available to us. We had patient stories that we could take in and say, here's patients that have been successful and why. And so our doctors got behind us. And for 6 years, Sophie was on chemotherapy. She got off about 6.5 months ago. The type of tumor that she has is a very pesky one. It's low grade. So traditionally, these are not terminal tumors. There's a 95% survival rate. The challenge is because it's slow growing, the cells rarely divide, and chemo only gobbles up dividing cells. So chemo also doesn't get rid of these. They are in the patient's brain forever. So knowing that, and knowing that there was this risk of having a really long chemotherapy path with Sophie, cannabis was immediately given to her even before she started the chemo. And now all these years later, you would think after 6 years of being pumped full of poison, my little girl would not be that healthy. But in fact, it's the exact opposite. She is the healthiest kid I know. We have studied her immune system under Dr. Arnaud Jewett. We started working with Dr. Jewett 2 years ago when Sophie had a second brain tumor surgery. I knew that I wanted to get clinical trials going for her. We had the trials going on in Israel with a lot of other cancers, but we were never able to replicate Sophie's brain tumor in what's called CRISPR technology. We weren't able to source live tissue to get into animals at the time. So Dr. Jewett was able to help me here in the States. And she implanted Sophie's tissue into humanized mice that pump human blood, whose blood-brain barriers mimic that of human beings, as do their immune system. So it's like having a tiny human model when you're doing this research. But it was when she tested Sophie's blood that she really realized something was very special about our child, because at 6 years old, when she did this blood draw, Sophie was on 4 chemos, had a brain tumor. Her immune system should have been severely broken, but instead her immune system was working 5 times better than that of any healthy adult Dr. Jewett had studied in her 30-year career, which was hundreds of patients. So when she started to understand what was going on with Sophie, and she saw that something was super unique here, she wanted more patients. And that really started to help us understand why Sophie had had so much success over the years with chemotherapy, why she was so healthy, why she never lost all her hair, why her immune system was not being taxed and targeted and just completely wiped out like all the other children that were taking the same protocols, why she was healing so fast. She had a brain tumor surgery, which is what got us this tissue and helped us with our research. And she literally had no inflammation on her face from an 8-hour brain tumor surgery where they cut her from here to here. She had a huge incision all the way around her head. She had no signs of bruising whatsoever, which is basically medically impossible. And she was released from the hospital in less than 48 hours instead of 3 to 5 days, and told she could go back to school in 1 to 2 days instead of 1 to 2 weeks, which is what it should have been. And so we started to understand, okay, there's a profound immunological response occurring here that's reducing tons of inflammation. Her healing ability has been sped up. What's happening? So 17 patients later, all that were consuming CannaKids oils, which again, is CKSoul now, we started looking at patients in all varying stages of disease. And what we found was the same across the board. Dr. Jewett's field of expertise is natural killer cells. It's in her 30 years that she's been published over 150 times the top journals in the world. And it is the failure of the natural killer cells that lead us to get cancer in the first place. And in all of these patients who had never been on chemo or on cannabis yet, they had a broken NK cell system. Once the patients started the cannabinoids, the therapy that we put them on with our oils, their NK started working again, started functioning again. Those patients that were 4 years past a terminal diagnosis who should have succumbed to their disease many, many years ago, their immune function was higher than that of a healthy adult. And one of these young men couldn't even grow hair because he had so much radiation. So to look at him, you would never believe that, but to study him from the inside, it was something quite profound. So we have now wrapped up that research. We have, Dr. Jude is actually finalizing the paper. I'm hoping that it's done this week. It's going to be submitted to the top journals in the world. And within 3 months time is what we're hoping will, anywhere from 2 to 4 months, we're hoping that that publication is going to be in the journals for everyone to access. And that publication is showing that not only is cannabinoids turning the natural killer cell system back on, but it's also targeting and killing cancer stem cells, which are the seeds to cancer, which even chemo and radiation can't do, which also helped us to understand why we're seeing so much benefit in patients sometimes when cannabis is all they're using and they have cancer and they've been sent home with no chemotherapy on board. They have no chance of living, but they're beating it and they're surviving. Now, there are reasons why we think it works better for some patients than others, but that research still has to be proven out. We do believe that it has to do with just the overall lack of having natural killer cells at all. They're not being anything to turn on. And in Sophie's situation, what we discovered in her was that she has no natural killer cells in her brain at all, which was a birth defect, we believe. So for some reason, there's a blood-brain barrier defect happening, and those NK cells from the neck down are stronger than any healthy adults in 30 years of research, but from the neck up, they don't exist. So there's something happening where those cells are not able to get into the brain. So Dr. Jewett has also worked on a brain cancer therapeutic that we are working towards moving to human trials as we speak, in hopes that brain cancer will be something that we'll be able to target and treat in the very near future, hopefully in the next few years is the hope and prayer. So a lot's going on in that world. And the last thing that I'll say before I take some questions is that, speaking about COVID-19 and natural killer cells, just very quickly, I'd like to recommend everyone be taking medical cannabis tinctures in some form, anywhere, from 40 to 50 milligrams a day, I feel is a great kind of target area for boosting the immune system. What we're seeing come out of China is that COVID is absolutely attacking and killing the natural killer cells. And the patients that we're seeing succumb to this disease are patients with obesity, heart disease, immunological issues, specific mutations, they're immunocompromised. All of those patients that I just notated, they already have a broken natural killer cell system. So we believe that that cannabis can be beneficial in helping fight COVID. And there's even additional research from Canada coming into the States about that very thing right now. So take your cannabis, guys. Stay healthy. Thank you for joining me. And please do your research. You can find tons of research on savingsophie.org, which is our charity. You can learn more about us at CKSoul, CKSoul.com. And you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the likes. So thanks again for coming. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them at this time.
There are definitely questions popping up for you in the chat window, Tracy. So please do go jump into the chat room and start chatting with people, because the questions are flying in. And we're really out of time here for your spot. And we're going to move on to the next speaker. But thank you so much for being here. And I'll catch you in the background when the girls are chatting.
Thank you.
Not sure.
Thank you.
All right. So next, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Carol Ortega Algarra. She's the managing director of Muisca Capital Group. She's originally from Bogota, Colombia, and is the managing director, as I mentioned, and founder of Muisca Capital Group. And for over 20 years, Carol has continuously demonstrated the ability to successfully guide cross-functional teams and achieve strategic goals for a diverse group of organizations at the international arena. In Colombia, as a professor for Xavier University, Carol led various research and consultancy projects within the financial industry, taught classes, and was the director of postgraduate programs in accounting. Within the governmental sector at the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Tourism of Colombia, she provided the technical lead on all matters related to the process and convergence towards international standards of accounting. For the country, and under this role, Carol co-wrote the standards of accounting and financial information currently applicable in Colombia. She has authorship on numerous accounting and business-related academic publications worldwide. She has led the research and implementation of the incubator, accelerator, and microfinance program, now the biggest one in the state of Oregon, serving the Latino community as the Deputy Executive Director for InStove. She established the organization strategy, resulting in the first place of the Portland Social Venture Society Fast Pitch competition, among others. Taking InStove from a startup to a sophisticated, sustainable, growth-oriented, multinational organization. She's provided business and financial consultancy services to legal cannabis startups in the US since 2014. She is the founder and board of directors chair of the Colombian Cannabis Entrepreneurs Network. She earned a BS in accounting and finance and a master's degree in management accounting and a master's in business administration. And we could just go on and on with her resume, but I don't want to take up too much of her speaking time. So Carol, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so pleased to have you here. And I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was quite an introduction. Thank you so much. I actually forget about all those things already, so thank you for reminding me those great experiences. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Brad, for putting this amazing network together. I believe that now that we're moving things digitally, these kind of spaces are vital. We need to keep connected. We need to keep our business going. And in my opinion, the cannabis industry right now is facing one of the biggest opportunities that we have seen so far for our industry. As an entrepreneurs, as a founders, I know that all of you have been successfully overcoming a lot of limitations, a lot of problems. This is how the cannabis industry gave us a welcome back in the day with all these limitations to overcome, and we have been successfully overcoming this. So this right now, that is our big opportunity. It's time to keep going. And well, thank you once again, Brad, for your invitation. I would like to give you to all the audience an overview of what's going on in Latin America right now, how the cannabis industry, how the investment opportunities, how the investors are looking at the industry right now under this COVID-19 situation. Well, first of all, we have been seeing increasing in sales in United States in the industry in about 36 to 40%, which is great. I think that this is one of the biggest increase in growth for the whole industry in the United States, which is getting a lot of attention for international investing opportunities. In Colombia, we legalized medicinal cannabis back in 2016. It's been 4 years already of learning curve. We are finally this year getting some final products on the market. And we are seeing how some exportations have happened into United States. 2 months ago, Avicana, a leading organization here, successfully was able to export 100,000 CBD hemp seeds to Denver, Colorado. So that means that the industry is open to a global market. And this is very important right now. In our operations, we never have been this busy before. A lot of institutional funds, mainly in Latin America, are now interested in joining the industry. Right now, in the beginning of a pandemic, there's very, very few industries that have been successfully show growth, and we are one of these. So this is definitely a huge opportunity. And big institutions, big Latin American funds, pension funds are aware of that, and they want to join the party. Right now, all these institutions, we are advising these institutions to take a look into United States. For institutions, well, they are interested in Series E, B, and we believe there's a lot of opportunities in United States for growth and for make good returns over investments. In the case in Latin America, we are at the seed capital level still in Colombia, for example. As I said before, in Colombia right now, we are just seeing final products finally after 4 years of learning curve. Exportations are happening. We have exporting successfully to US and to Canada so far. I know that there's big exportations coming on into markets like Germany, in Australia. That means that Colombia is generating a great quality products, and definitely is the time to capitalize a lot of the efforts that I know all the entrepreneurs made in the past. Another important issue is that historically, we know that in all these type of recessions, in all of this type of communal disaster, if you will, of necessity, we have seen the increase in use of psychotropics. So right now, the liquor industry is doing very well. The cannabis industry, of course, coffee, of course, for cannabis and coffee, Colombia is capitalizing on this circumstances, but most of the economy is breaking down, and at the end it will have some impact in our industry as well. But in terms of investment, I gotta say I haven't seen that many attention to our industry before. So this is a good news that I wanted to share. This is an optimistic point of view, and that I wanted to share our experience in order to keep going. And Ecuador, this is also mobilizing the policy reforms that we were waiting for. And I believe that this is a great time for all these nonprofit organizations, associations to keep working forward to a full legalization in US, at least a medicinal legalization. We have seen the results so far in the preliminary instance, for example, at the university in Canada and some university in Miami, that are backing the benefits of cannabis to treating patients with COVID-19. I believe that there is an ethical and moral opportunity as well to show how essential really is cannabis for our patients. And now under these pandemic circumstances. The industry is being looked by a lot of governments in Latin America as an opportunity to generate some wealth, especially under these circumstances. We have been reached by the government of Ecuador, where they already legalized cannabis at the country level, but now they are working towards the regulation for license and all the structure in order to regulate the whole industry. El Salvador is also looking forward to start the process. Colombia is looking forward to start the process regarding recreational use of cannabis. The government is aware that we need to establish some sort of regulation or path in order to being able to commercialize the flower internally. Colombia cannot export flower or biomass by law, but we believe that internal patients need to be able to buy flowers in a clinic, in a dispensary, where they can have some professional assistance of how to use it. Instead, right now, unfortunately, in Colombia, the internal market is all going to the black market still, because we didn't decriminalize the commercialization of flower internally. I think that the government is realizing now how important is to structure the whole value chain of the industry and not only some primary issues, which I believe is stopping the internal growth of cannabis in Colombia. So even under these circumstances, I believe that the industry is doing a great job, is showing the world what the benefits of cannabis can be, how we it's not only an issue to name it essential, it's an issue to provide the patient with a good guidance and with a solution. And well, in Colombia, we are here now trying to decriminalize and regulate. It's more to regulate the consumption and the commercialization of the flower at the internal level. In terms of investment, as I was sharing before, there's a lot of attention, especially for growing markets like US. And of course, angel investors are still interested in joining the opportunities in Colombia and other countries that are opening themselves to these new operations and this new industry that is definitely showing some benefits. Let's remember the 30s when liquor legalization happens, the government in US realized how important it was to get some speed into the economy after getting into a deep recession back then. I believe that is going to happen very soon, the same with cannabis. And so I'm expecting, hopefully, let's see how this election goes, and let's see how the new administration is looking at the industry. But in a positive but also realistic, I think that the cannabis industry is doing very well, and it's an opportunity that we need to take, activists and all of our efforts, to push full legalization, or at least medicinal legalization in US, and to push all the legalization that is needed in Colombia and other Latin American countries.
Wow, Carol, thank you so very much. That's really very educational. So I'm looking in the chat window right now. We have a number of questions. We have, looks like some friends calling in from Ecuador and Guatemala. So great if you could jump onto the chat window here. There's questions popping up. So if you could please answer those, that would be great.
Definitely.
And I'd like to move along and introduce our next speaker. Thank you, Carol. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Jacques Natur, COO and founder of MyCureAll. Jacques has been the director of substance abuse outpatient programs at the redesigned New York State OASAS, which is the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Services. And he's been there for the past 12 years. Jacques has provided quality care as a licensed clinical social worker for the last 24 years and has been responsible for multi-million-dollar budgets within that OASAS and the New York Office of Mental Health. Jacques is a graduate of Columbia University School of Social Work and adjunct professor at Columbia University School of Social Work. The Office of Addiction Services and Support oversees one of the nation's largest addiction services systems, with approximately 1,600 prevention, treatment, and recovery programs. OASAS is a chemical dependency treatment programs, have an average daily enrollment of nearly 100,000 people and serve approximately 234,000 individuals every year. This includes the direct operation of the 12 addiction treatment centers, which serve around 8,000 persons per year. OASAS is the single designated state agency responsible for the coordination of state-federal relations in the area of addiction services. Their mission is to improve the lives of New Yorkers by leading a comprehensive premier system of addiction services for prevention, treatment, and recovery. Jacques has devoted his career to the public sector of social work and has worked with community-based programs over the last 20 years. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Jacques Natur. Thank you so much for joining us and being here today. And I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you. I mean, you said a lot, very powerful. Thank you for that introduction. I just want to thank everyone who put this together. It's great to see the community come together like this, and we're here for a great cause. And we're here to make sure that we promote medicinal cannabis and cannabis for recreational use and make sure it's done for the right reasons. I want to tell everyone a little further about working with OMH and OASIS. Both OASIS and OMH have morphed their insurance coverage and payment structures over the year, which progressed from direct payments for only seeing one person per day for one payment to an APG, ambulatory patient groups, to the more recent evolution of having value-based payments. As a point of reference, most private insurances follow the policy and operational regulations prescribed by CMS, Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And during the pandemic of COVID-19 has repealed the regulations associated with teletherapy as well as those associated with regulation protocols. My wife and I joined forces in our mission to provide alternative medication-assisted treatment because of our shared war stories associated with the opiate epidemic. As a native New Yorker, I've been exposed to the community that illegally engaged in cannabis for recreational and medical cannabis, as it was commonly used by my peer group. Needless to say that I was shocked and pleasantly surprised when we formalized our company. We have all had personal experiences in which we lost family members, friends, colleagues, or patients due to the opiate epidemic. As a social worker in New York City, I've seen the opiate and substance abuse disorders destroy communities and families. I want to point out some relevant stats that support our mission and vision with MyCureAll. According to NIH, substance abuse costs the country over $600 billion per year. Every dollar invested in addiction treatment programs yields a return of $4 to $7 in reduced drug-related crimes, criminal justice, and cost and theft. Annual deaths from opiate overdoses are projected to reach nearly 82,000 by 2025, resulting in approximately 700,000 deaths from 2016 to 2025. From 1999 to 2017, there has been nearly 400,000 deaths because of the opiate overdose. Finally, it has been reported that there was a 30% increase in clients seeking medicinal cannabis scripts in those states that legalize recreational cannabis. The evidence indicates and supports that medicinal cannabis and CBD is a primary or supplementary medication-assisted treatment protocol for both opiate dependence and abuse, as well as some forms of mental health conditions. This is actually supported in many meta-analysis studies. One in particular is the emerging evidence for cannabis, role in opiate use disorders. This is published in the Cannabis and Cannabinoid Research. I want to change the subject and digress a little bit for a minute. And I want to talk about my current position in a large mental health clinic sanctioned by OMH and operated by a large social service agency in New York. The Bronx Clinic has over 1,200 clients and 36 providers that transitioned to virtual therapy as a result of COVID-19, which took us about a 2-week process to turn that wheel. This was not an easy task and involved the transition of a virtual discussion to implement policy for operations, as the office was completely shut down. We have successfully completed this transition and all the mechanisms working to provide the continued care. If it wasn't for having a web-based EMR, if it wasn't for having the programs for prescribing web-based, this would never have occurred in such a short window at all. Of course, the big winner in all this is Zoom, who took over and kind of made this all feasible to help our clients and to make sure they all receive the care they need. The end result of this was that we saw an increased access to services that increased to 92%, meaning that our no-show rate dropped to 8%. Typically, before COVID-19, it was like 35% on no-show rates for clients. So it's a great opportunity to see how clients are utilizing services and maintaining in the community. CBD and medical cannabis administered with continued care will prevent relapse from opiate and promote psychiatric treatment. These substances need to be covered by an individual's insurance policy. As the data proves, we will save lives and provide safe alternative forms of medical treatment to reduce recidivism and redundant services. Operating with this theory in mind, we developed a patient-centered full ecosystem for the medicinal cannabis patient, indifferent if they are new or currently have a prescription. We are focused on the 25 million Americans that would want to seek medicinal cannabis services with our 4 states targeted. This would benefit from using the MyCureAll app. Our new patient journey allows for assessment tools to be implemented with the RODS, post-traumatic stress, GADS, and PHQ-9 assessments, which provide results that indicate a score and connects the patient with the prescriber. We wanted to ensure the ecosystem is user-friendly and builds a unique feature to meet the patient's needs. Here are some of the patent-pending technologies from our lab to assist opiate-dependent patients and assist in bringing the teletherapy together. Please take a look at our quick film right now. Thank you. So as she's going through the great display, I'm just going to read a little about this. This is the Canna meter and Canna measure. The countermeasure is patient's interactive baseline of 3 symptoms are assessed based on qualifying conditions. Patient is asked about strains based on batch number and form of ingestion. Patients rate their systems prior to using the preferred medical cannabis from 1 to 10. Then, through a patient-friendly interaction, rate their symptoms post-intoxication. All symptoms reported with a 15% or greater reduction are recorded for the patient and presented to their MD, dispensary, and insurance company with their permission. We've recorded the patient cannabinoid profile, currently activating the THC and CBD levels, and provide objective data associated for symptoms, which includes THC and CBD levels for all patients in our database. All symptoms reduced by 15% or more are transferred to what's called a cannameter. What's the cannameter? Well, the back end of the cannameter operates, and this is what Elaine said earlier, on 347 meta-analysis studies to aggregate data to present the positive or negative effects of the strains with their cannabinoid properties on a particular qualifying condition. Ultimately, this is the prescriber is able to find alternative strains that meet the client's cannabinoid and or qualifying condition. Thank you very much. All you.
Hey, thank you so much, Jacques. I think we lost your last slide there. It got stuck. You might want to expand your screen a little bit. And sorry about that music, everybody. We just got that shut off. I know it was a little distracting there at the end. Jacques, could you please put up your last slide there and then let us know how the audience can reach out to you as well. There's a number of questions that are popping up in the chat window. So when we're done here, if you could jump over in there and answer some questions. Where can everybody reach you?
At J-Nir, J-N-I-R, at MyCureAll.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we do have a number of questions in there. So please do jump into the chat room. So, okay, so I'd really love to thank all the speakers for coming out today. Thank you so very much. That was really very educational and fantastic. And so we're going to just let the speakers jump in on the chat room and start answering a few questions. And we're going to move into the investor pitch competition portion of the program here. I would like to reintroduce you to Mr. Mathew Nordgren, who's going to be hosting this portion for us. As mentioned earlier, he is currently CEO and founder of Arcadian Fund and Arcadian Capital Management. It's a venture fund focused that invests in ancillary businesses in and around cannabis and hemp industries. More specifically on Series A type opportunities where proven businesses are looking for growth equity to attack and win new markets. He was recently named one of the top 100 most influential people in the cannabis industry by High Times magazine. And I'm just getting a note that we seem to have lost Matt. Matt, if you can hear this, please rejoin. All right, give us just a moment here to bring Matt back into the picture here. Matt, will you join us here momentarily? Okay, so I hope you can all hear me. Somebody hit me in the chat window. Let me know that you can hear me. So what I would like to do is I'd like to run through the format of what the next portion of the program is going to look like. So Mathew Nordgren is going to be introducing each of the judges and as well as the presenting companies and the CEO. These presentations are going to be about 5 minutes with a 3-minute Q&A from the judges and a 1-minute transition break between each presentation to allow a little bit of setup time for the next presentation. During the Q&A, companies may have one other team member join them when answering questions from the judges. Perhaps it's their co-founder, CTO, or COO, and they will be on the webinar screen with Mathew Nordgren, the CEO and investor judges. So the judges and the audience are going to rank the 7 presentations and vote on what they like. And then Mathew is going to announce the top 3 presentations that have been selected by the judges and the top 3 presentations then that have been selected by the audience. So it looks like Mathew's having trouble getting back in. So let me jump in and start introducing the judges. Hold on, let me get there. Bear with me just a moment. I wasn't prepared to judges. Here we go. Okay, so our judges, our celebrity judges today are Adam Levin, the executive chairman for High Times Magazine. He's the founder of High Times Holding and has served as its chairman and chief executive officer since its inception in December 2016. In March of 2017, he led the acquisition. Did we get Mathew back? I heard somebody. Okay. Yeah, so I see we have all the judges coming online, so that's great. And so briefly, so Adam Levin, Executive Chairman, High Times, thank you so much for being here. As well, we have Alan Stone. He's the Managing Director of Wall Street Research. During the past 25 years, Alan Stone and Company has become one of the top-ranked investment consulting firms serving emerging companies. During his career, he's been involved in a wide range of investor relations, investment banking, corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, and has arranged numerous $2 to $25 million financing and merger transactions for NASDAQ, Amex,
Hello?
NYSE. Oh, there you go. Matt's back.
Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to make sure that you guys
Yes,
got in.
we're okay. Yeah, I'm just on a conference call.
So, Matt, want to turn this back over to you to introduce the judges. I only just barely got started.
Wonderful.
With Adam Levin, you can just pick right up from there and start introducing all the judges, please. Thank you so much for coming back again.
I'd love to do it. Adam, you changed the Hollywood sign. I like it, buddy. It looks great. So, you know, well, let's go around. I think we only have a couple of minutes. We have so many wonderful people on this panel right now. I'm just going to go one by one, let you introduce yourself, actually. I think that'll do more justice. We'll go alphabetically. So, Adam, can you just give us 30 seconds on your background and High Times? Thanks for being with us. I think you're on mute.
I acquired High Times a little over 2.5 years ago. I've worked in opportunistic investments my entire career. I've led companies and bought companies such as Bebo from AOL and companies from Yahoo, and really an opportunistic investor across multiple mediums, but really focusing on cannabis lately.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Adam. It's been great working with you over the years, buddy.
Absolutely.
Kind of got into this space together. So looking forward to getting your thoughts on today's opportunities. Alan Stone, Alan, been a friend a long time as well. Alan, you got a heck of a background. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Great to see you here, doing a great job, and Brad doing a great job behind the scenes there. Ian's a great host too. My background, been on Wall Street in New York with major investment banking firms for 15 years, moved to California 35 years ago. Our office is in Westwood. I own Wall Street Research. It's a 40-year-old independent research firm. We're ranked #1 on Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Wall Street Research is our website, wallstreetresearch.org. We have 3 cannabis analysts. We publish and distribute research on publicly traded companies. There's about 300 listings. We're expanding our coverage in the cannabis industry, cannabis, hemp, CBD, ancillary, everything in the industry. And we have a global following. We have 110,000 subscribers. So we're also doing private companies as well. We help companies raise capital, do some mergers and acquisitions.
Great. Thank you, Alan. That's going to be really helpful for today's call. Glad you're doing some more private companies too. I've read a lot of your work, and it's wonderful. I encourage everybody to go check it out after. Anthony, thank you for being with us. Tell us a little bit about New Lake Capital, if you can.
Great. First, thanks for having me. Excited for the panel here. New Lake Capital, we've raised over $100 million from over 170 investors since last August. And we're focused on investing in real estate that's at use in the cannabis industry. So whether it be dispensaries or whether it be industrial facilities supporting the growing of marijuana, we're involved in it all. I'm excited to hear everybody's pitches, have been there myself. Before this venture, I went out and raised $50 million from a publicly traded company and used that capital to grow a business, acquire it through, grow it through M&A, and ultimately sell it out to Blackstone. And then previous to that, 15 years in investment banking, running various businesses at JP Morgan, taking companies public, raising capital for folks. So I'm excited to see what people have brought today.
Well, the industry needs more capital, so glad to have your perspective, and it's coming. I know you guys are having better conversations there. Brent, let's go to you next. Hoban Law Group, pinnacle of the industry. Thanks for all the work that Hoban has done.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. And it's good to see a number of friendly faces. I think we've been on panels with a number of you folks, so really appreciate being involved today. And so Hoban, we're on the very short list of law firms in the space that's 100% committed to cannabis. We're about 50% marijuana, 50% hemp. About 50 attorneys headquartered in Denver, got about 28 states covered. We have a few folks in Latin America, expanding into Europe. We're a full service business law firm. So corporate securities, M&A, venture fund formation, litigation, IP, real estate, anything a business or an investor would need to get done in this space, we can do that. I'm a 20-year corporate securities M&A attorney, started in Silicon Valley back in '99. Did a lot of venture fund work, did a lot of work with entrepreneurs and startup companies. Came back to Denver in '03, was with a large law firm for a while. Was then associate general counsel at Quiznos for about 4 years during their good run. So that was great. Ran a couple of small businesses, helped run a $65 million private equity firm. That sold off, and so I've been in the cannabis space for about 3.5, 4 years ago, or 3.5, 4 years so far as part of Hoban. It's been a wild ride. The industry is fascinating, and it's great to be part of a law firm that's we're not just good lawyers, but also entrepreneurial thinking.
Brent, you aren't charging us for this hour, are you?
Just you, Matthew.
Okay. Well, as Cody and Ryan and some of our other friends on here can tell you, a lot of lawyers are needed to get through this right now, but it's worth it. So thanks for being with us, Brent. David, tell us about your advisory business a little bit. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me today. My name is Dr. David Kunick. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, actually, and also a doctor of healthcare management, but a serial entrepreneur. I've started 13 companies in the last 16 years, and I've started 7 cannabis companies in the last 10 years, and I've sold 5 of them. With that being said, in the last 12 months, we've helped 19 cannabis companies all here in the United States secure over $10+ million. So looking forward to seeing what's out there. And as someone who actually started 7 cannabis companies in 5 different states in many different industries within cannabis, I'm really looking forward to hearing what people have today. So thank you for having me.
Now that'll be helpful for everybody. Maybe you can help someone on the call that we're about to find their exit in a number of years. It'd be good to look back on this day and see if that happens. Otherwise, just sell something to Adam Levin. High Times is buying right now, apparently. So give Adam a call if you're looking. Ryan, brother, so good to see you from the Northeast, operator, investor, one of the most intelligent guys in the industry. Thank you for being here. Tell us about what you're doing and perspective you're coming today with.
Thanks, Matt. Perspective is looking at some of these new companies and excited to dig in. I've been investing in the space for 5 years on my own behalf and as an advisor to 2 different funds, one private equity group out of Hong Kong and an infrastructure debt fund here in the States. I also co-founded Revolutionary Clinics here in Massachusetts and have the legal bills, Brent, to prove it. It's been a long journey. Enjoy the industry and excited to dig in. I see one or two real dynamos in this batch.
Well, great. I've done a number of these deals with you before, and I hope these founders are ready because I know you asked some great, tough questions. Speaking of tough questions and great minds. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of tough questions and great minds, someone who you do a lot of work with, I think recently on a panel, actually, Ryan, Cody Sanchez, one of the great female leaders in our space and one of the great minds. I encourage you to follow her on social media. It's quite funny and fascinating, actually, on a daily. Cody, tell us what you're up to and how things are going.
Hey there, Matt. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me. Yeah, great to see so many familiar faces. This industry certainly is a small one. And so I think it's still cottage-like for sure. I'm with Entourage Effect Capital. We're a private investment group in the space. Been doing this since about 2014 as a cohesive unit. And I've raised $200 million to go after this segment of the market. We really started, I think, like a lot of people on this panel, with going after early stage investments, very similar to those I think we'll hear from today, and have sort of moved down the chain to later revenue stage companies, which is, you know, just different dragon to chase in this industry. Now that we're seeing more distressed opportunities. So excited to be here, excited to see some of these novel ideas, and certainly excited to figure out what the next companies are for all of us to invest in and help become the future titans of the industry.
Me too, Cody. Look forward to doing more of those with you. It's a joy to work with your group. And for everyone listening, if you're an entrepreneur, these are important things to ask, actually. You want to know your investors well as you can. You want to go in knowing what type of deals, what are their mandates, what are their, you know, what's their current portfolio look like. So, you know, really pay attention to a lot of this, and hopefully it's helpful for you going into other meetings, but certainly this one with so many great minds on the call. John, tell us a little bit about your business. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Looks like it froze up for a moment, but it's good to go now. Canadian. My background was corp finance, undergraduate degrees in accounting, finance, master's in finance. I was an entrepreneur, took 3 different companies public. One was a merger with a Bell Canada company for $560 million. We did another deal where we took a company public, sold it for 124 US cash, and 2 cows, which we sold for 45. I recently partnered up with 2 other entrepreneurs who are managing, you know, significant family offices, and together we're pooling our resources. And this group has already done about, let's see now, about 14 cannabis deals in the last 2 years. I've done about 5 or 6 on my own, so we're pooling our resources. We're looking at early to mid stage, and we're also interested in micro caps as well.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that. And lastly, but not least, Nick Easley. Nick's been in the industry a long time. It's funny, many of us in this industry find each other in random cities and states and countries, all fighting for the growth. Nick knows about as much as anybody in that topic. I think, Nick, don't you still potentially have more licenses than anybody I've known? I don't know if that's still the case, but we're excited to have your perspective, Nick, from an international, national perspective. How are things going? Tell us about your business.
Super good. I'll start my video just as a caveat. I'm in a beard contest right now, so a little different than the usual Nick if you're used to me in normal life.
You look different.
Well, Nick Easley here, Managing Director, Multiverse Capital. I'm also CEO of 3C Consulting, where 3C is almost 14 years old, from Colorado medical markets. After I got out of the military, got a medical card in Colorado and really learned about that industry and helped to start the first medical commercial licenses get licenses. Have then since worked on licensed work in 27 states, and we actually have investments in 13 countries, and that were all clients that we had helped to get licenses for. Multiverse Capital, we look for a lot of early stage capital kind of placements with our 4 different funds: a medical fund, an ancillary fund, a recreational fund, as well as a new hemp fund. But most of our investments internationally, and the bigger investments over like 5 million in the US, all are going through special purpose vehicles at this point. So, you know, be it a plant touching business, you know, I'm currently at one of our licensed facilities here in California that we made a significant investment into in this last month. 6,000 mile safe road trip between 14 operational companies here throughout the United States. So really looking forward to these initial pitches here today.
Well, thank you guys all for being here. It's really important for our industry to have so many great leaders helping give advice and perspective to the next group of great leaders. And together we just continue to get stronger. So with that being said, maybe we'll bring in our first CEO, Peter Vogel, who's a dear friend, actually, to many of us. I think everybody knows Peter. Peter will tell you a little bit about his business, but Peter, we're excited to hear from you. Thank you for building an online community. It's more important than ever now. Enjoy being a part of it myself. And for those of you who don't know, Peter Vogel.
Thank you, Matt. And thanks to all the judges for joining. I don't think I've ever been in a pitch contest with this many accomplished judges. So thank you to all of you for your time, and also Brad for setting this all up. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if this is functioning. Share. 1 second. Let me try and get this on. All right, there we go. All right, my name is Peter Vogel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Leafwire, and we've quickly become known as the LinkedIn of cannabis. We built Leafwire because there was no centralized business hub for the cannabis business community to connect online, to share news, to find employees, and just simply connect. So why not LinkedIn? That's the first question we get. LinkedIn is simply too big. There's 660 million members, twice the population of the United States. There's simply too many people representing every single industry in the world. There's also a lot of stigma. People who live in legal states sometimes forget this, but the majority of the country, it's still illegal to consume any amount of cannabis. And for most people, I'll say a lot of people don't necessarily want to put the word cannabis or marijuana on their LinkedIn profile because it may not be their last industry. They may want to go back to finance. They may want to go back to a Fortune 500 company. So stigma is a big reason why Leafwire is necessary. So we built Leafwire. Leafwire is an online business network for the cannabis community. Functions much like a Facebook or a LinkedIn does, where there's a personal profile. People upload a picture, location, professional experience, etc. There's a news feed that goes down the center that's user generated. People commonly share news, current events, general questions to the rest of the community, or really just conversations. We have a recommended connection section where we recommend based on proximity or sector of the industry that we think people may be interested in connecting and communicating further. And we've had, since we launched about 18 months ago, I think we're getting up close to about 800,000 connection requests have been sent across the platform. We also have an industry events calendar, which used to be a lot of physical events. Now we're mostly webinars and virtual events, but that is an industry hemp and cannabis only event calendar for the industry. And we recently launched a job board. And we have about 1,500 open cannabis and hemp jobs featuring, currently it's most of the largest MSOs in the industry. And we are very optimistic that along with our job board and some relationships with corporate recruiters that we formed, that jobs will eventually be probably the most lucrative revenue stream for Leafwire. And we've had a ton of traction since we launched about 18 months ago. We're almost up to 34,000 members that have all created profiles. And these are all cannabis professionals. That's about 300% growth over the last year. On a daily basis, we have somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 daily active users, unique users on the site. That's up about 4 times what it was from a year ago. We've had above 20K MRR for the last couple months. We're actually hoping to hit 25K this month. And we're aiming with some revenue from some job recruiting to get to 40 to 45K a month by the end of the year. This is our daily active users chart. You can see since the beginning of 2019, we were down at 3 to 500. Now we're up between 1,500 to 2,000. So it's gone up 4-fold. And this is pretty interesting. You can see Alexa, this is historical traffic trends. Back in May, Leafwire is the pink line down here at the bottom. A year ago, we were below Ganjapreneur, Cannabis Business Times, Green Entrepreneur, MJ Biz Daily. And you can see in 1 year time, we've become the second busiest business news and network type site. So how do we make money? So Leafwire is a freemium model. All of our members join for free. They pay us for advertising in our emails that we send out daily or on the platform. We also have a marketplace that's a Yellow Pages type directory where people pay a monthly fee to be listed in one of 60 cannabis-friendly categories, things like payment processing, PR, extraction, real estate, etc. I just mentioned our job site. We are currently doing free trials for everyone, and based on where we are right now with the pandemic, we'll likely continue that until close to the end of the year. But a revenue stream will be monthly fees for posting jobs. The other revenue stream there is we get a percentage of all of the job placements that we get done with our recruiting partner. And last but not least, we will have some premium subscriptions we'll be charging for at the end of the year. We're waiting till we get a little bit bigger, have more functionality, but it'll be cheaper than a LinkedIn, but it'll offer similar capabilities, enhanced communication, messaging, etc. Revenue has been going up steadily over the last year. Revenue's up about, I think it's almost fourfold from where we were a year ago. We had a little dip in March due to the pandemic. Advertising went down. We think this month we'll be back up though. April bounced back and we should be back up to 25K in May. We have a very strong team of co-founders. My partner and I have started several different companies in the online internet marketing space. We both had a successful exit. We both scaled memberships of millions of members before. We have a very experienced team of founding partners and advisors who both have a ton of experience, not only in cannabis, but also in finance. Currently, we're raising a convertible note. We did a seed round last year of $1 million. We're doing a convertible note right now of $750 that will convert at a discount to our Series A. And I've raised about half of it so far. So we're looking for about 400,000 more. And we believe with the evolution of our job board and cannabis being one of the fastest growing job markets in the world for the next 5 to 10 years, a likely exit would be one of the large traditional job boards after legalization will be interested in acquiring us to gain an immediate kind of foothold and domination in the cannabis job industry. So in summary, we've tripled our member base over the last year. We've quadrupled engagement levels. We've tripled revenue, and we think the kind of movement into the jobs arena is going to make it much more likely that we can achieve an exit in the coming years. And I think that is all. So I'm happy to take some questions.
Great, Peter. So I think the format was that we were just going to go company to company, but I can't let that happen because we have too many great minds on this call. So we're going to have to do something. I'm sorry, Brad and Ian, if this isn't protocol, but we're going to have to get some thoughts here. So as we move forward, I think there's 7 companies. After the end of your presentation, okay, you can pick one judge to let ask you a question. And if you were listening to their backgrounds, maybe try to pick the one that is the most relevant to your line of business. We won't have a lot of time, maybe 60 seconds, but pick a judge that you think you'd like to propose to ask you a question, then you can follow that with a quick answer.
Well, I think Nick already beat me in the beard competition. So I'll go to Cody since we've met several times in person, and I think you're investing in a lot of interesting companies.
Well, thanks. It was lovely to hear your pitch. I suppose my question would be for you. That was a quick pitch. When we've spoken before, you had a lot of interesting information that I don't think you were able to share in such a short segment. What's the one thing that you weren't able to share with us today that you wish you had the time to? And maybe what's the one thing you think we all should take away from this presentation you just gave?
The one thing I wasn't able to share really is that we're also starting to partner with many of the conferences in the industry to become essentially kind of like the de facto conference app for almost all of the conferences in a way that it will allow us to not just be a network when people are offline, but will allow us to be the network in person at the event, beforehand, afterwards. Because I think we all have tried to use conference apps. You download them, you try to learn them while you're there, and then the second you leave the conference, you never look at it again. So I think that's one of the things where we're moving towards that seemed like too much to put into the presentation, but I think that's going to be a large acquisition source for us, and also potentially a large revenue source.
Thank you, Peter. Hey, I'm going to do one more because I think you might be the only media company, and I want to get Adam's input on this. Adam, do you have a quick question for Peter before we move to the next business?
No, I think it's fascinating, the scale and what you're doing with conferences. How can you take the information you're getting from the conferences and the data and give your consumers or your members more access to that data?
Well, one of the things we want to let people do is indicate ahead of time on Leafwire that they're going to be at a conference. So before you show up at a conference, you can go into Leafwire, do all the networking set of meetings in advance with everyone and get them set up. And then afterwards do the same, so that when you get home, you can continue to do that networking with all the same people in the app that you're already using.
Great, thank you, Peter. Not much more important than getting the right story out in this industry right now. The media aspect is critical for everything we're all trying to do. Thank you for bringing the community together and being a great media source for that, Peter. And Cody, thank you for that question. That instigated a whole nother line of business that I actually didn't know about either in terms of these conferences. Zach, we're going to go to you next. Peter, be back in a little bit, brother. Thank you. So we have Zach with Polar Extracts. Zach, we've seen your work over the years. We know we've had some communications. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to learning a little bit more about your business.
Hey, just real quick, Mathew, before you jump over to Zach here. So totally fine to have some Q&A time. Absolutely. So we definitely like to do 8 minutes for each speaker and 3 minutes of Q&A. So you're good to go.
Okay, good.
Hey, Matt, can I ask a quick question since we were given the open door for Q&A?
Absolutely, brother.
Appreciate it. I invested, Peter, in a industry-specific LinkedIn for the architecture and construction community, and found it really, really difficult for them to monetize and step away from LinkedIn once that community became more tech savvy. That's my first question. How do you keep this segmented and separate once the cannabis industry normalizes? And then also, when most people are finding their top talent, their real dynamos in their organizations from recruiters instead of that type of platform, how do you intend to step up that game?
Right. Great question. So one, I think once the stigma is gone, which I do think will take a long time, because even when things legalize, it's still, I think it's going to be like alcohol. It'll still go state by state. So I don't think it's going to be a couple years before the stigma's gone. I think we're looking at more like 5 to 10. So I think there is time for us to build that scale before we get there. But I think having enough cannabis-centric resources. So for example, having the largest cannabis calendar of events and webinars that people have access to, having a marketplace that's all cannabis-friendly services. So for example, you want to find a PR company who understands cannabis, you're not going to be able to go find that on LinkedIn. In answer to your second question, which was, sorry, can you refresh my memory?
Yeah, no problem. Second question was, I've found almost all of our top talent through recruiters in each of the cannabis companies that I'm involved in.
Yep.
And it's almost never been on a platform like this.
So, great question. And that was kind of another thing that there wasn't enough time. We just signed a partnership recently with Flower Hire, a cannabis recruiting company out of LA. They've placed about 300 people over the last couple of years. So we are now, they're our exclusive recruiting partner. We're literally adding pop-ups onto the Leafwire website asking people, are you hiring in the next 3 months? Are you looking for a job? We run them through a series of 4 or 5 questions, and they go in a form straight over to Flower Hire, and they do all the rest for us. And then we keep a percentage of the revenue. So we get a percentage on both the candidates we send and the companies we send. And if there's a match between both, we get double revenue share. And we're looking to build that relationship out over the coming year. And who knows, I mean, that could turn into a closer relationship, but we are looking to offer those advanced high-level recruiting solutions.
Great, thanks.
That's an interesting category. And again, just goes to the community and sort of bringing everybody together. Thank you for that, Ryan. Zach, looking forward to hearing about Polar Extracts. Let's get you started here, my friend. Thank you. Hey, Zach, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm Zach Sekar, Polar Extracts, industrial scale cannabinoid processing. And yeah, I just want to say thanks real quick to everyone who joined us. This is quite a treat to have such a panel of distinguished and intelligent people. Brad, I don't know how you do it, but the rest of us could learn a lot from you. Today, I'd like to just pretty briefly speak with you about what I consider the most exciting opportunity in the cannabinoid space. Market conditions and regulatory changes I think everyone is aware of, particularly in 2019, made hemp-derived phytocannabinoids, CBD in particular, extremely profitable and extremely high growth. And even with the economic recession, I think as a few of the speakers today alluded to, perhaps growth won't be exactly as big as BDS Analytics had thought a year ago, but we can still expect double-digit growth in what's already a multi-billion-dollar market. So hemp farmers can read the newspaper as well. They saw that there's a massive surge in demand now that the descheduling of CBD happened. But what ended up happening is, they started 1,000-acre hemp farms, but no one actually wants hemp. Consumers want tinctures and consumables and vapes and topicals. They don't want green plants that come out of the ground. And so billions of dollars worth of hemp crop is just rotting right on the farms. The main reason for this is because the processing infrastructure in this fledgling industry hasn't caught up with either the consumption or the farming. I want to do a very brief kind of terminology explanation just so everyone who's listening is on the same page. When I speak about processing or extraction, it's this highlighted in blue section in between growing the plants and creating the consumer product. And extraction itself is pretty simply taking a source material like hemp biomass and trying to take out the compounds that you do want. Usually cannabinoids and terpenes, leaving behind everything else, the chlorophyll, the water, the waxes, the pesticides, etc. And in general, extraction refers to the first stage of processing. There's a lot more you can do to an extract depending on what the manufacturer is trying to make at the end. But for the most part, it always starts with extraction. You need to get what you want out of that green plant first. So as I mentioned, the problem is that there's a massive bottleneck in processing. The solution as we see it is industrial scale concentrate manufacturing. No more chemistry sets slightly scaled up and run by people that aren't quite sure what they're doing. And that's where we come in. I'm Zach Sekar, as I mentioned, a serial entrepreneur, experienced in technology and financial sales, founder of multiple successful conference businesses. And my co-founder, Sean Kelly, is a professional engineer, research scientist. He's got deep experience in prototyping, mechanical and thermal engineering, and he's a specialist in cryogenic ethanol extraction, which brings us to Polar Extracts. Using cryogenic extraction processes, advanced technology from more mature industries, we can improve the quality, efficiency, and economics of cannabinoid processing. Not only do we generate profit by doing the processing and selling the output, but our optimizations while doing so enhances our IP portfolio. Using a flexible B2B business model lets us avoid the brand risk of trying to launch, the 95,000th consumer brand. And obviously we're going to want to stand up some pretty large factories at some point to do the kind of industrial scale processing we're talking about. But to scale there, we're starting with mobile extraction facilities. They're self-contained portable extraction labs. They can travel to the grow site, eliminating some of the shipping and logistic challenges that come along with trying to ship large amounts of biomass. The modular units scale easily because you can just build another one at a centralized manufacturing facility, but then decentralize your first stage extraction. And the real estate overhead doesn't scale up quite as poorly against you when you're putting things on the road. I'll very briefly touch on the financials. I think it's more fun to maybe talk about this afterwards. But the economics for processing something when there's such a severe bottleneck is pretty profitable. We generate revenue either through direct contract processing, such as a farm paying per kilogram to have it processed, or by purchasing biomass, processing it and selling it on to consumer brands. And yeah, even just by scaling these modular units alone, we see a clear path to a very, very large company. In order to build these units, we're right now raising $1.4 million. We're going to use it to fabricate the first several mobile labs, continue to develop intellectual property, and accelerate both our supply and sales pipelines. I'm going to switch to Q&A now, even though there's plenty more we can talk about. I think it'll be more interesting. But if you do want to contact me, feel free to send me an email at zach@polarextracts.co.
That's perfect, Zach. Thanks for that follow-up, and I'm sure people will. We have quite a few people here today. Really a great audience. Zach, who would you like to hear a question from out of the group?
Oh, man. That's tough. Brad has mentioned to me, and I haven't had time to do it, that I definitely need to become familiar with Cody. So I guess I'll start there.
Okay.
Hey, great presentation. Listen, I have a question. You know, it's really sort of a two-headed dragon that you have here with the fact that, we're in a capital-starved industry, and this is going to be a relatively capital-intensive business, even though, you have this modular design, which is really interesting. I haven't seen this before, so congrats on that thus far. How do you manage this, dragon of a startup in general in a capital-starved industry, and then the other, side of the dragon head is essentially that you really, you have to scale up with capital quickly in order to really get any sort of revenue. What are these independent units cost, and how are you going to manage this sort of capital intensive business that you have? And why should an investor like myself, who's looking for a 3 to 5x target, think that this business is a good venture style business with high multiples, as opposed to, maybe more of a debt deal you should be doing to, get equipment financing?
Yeah, no, you definitely nailed it. We certainly expect that we'll in the future be using a lot more debt financing. It basically is, as you said, it's the startup phase when your revenue is disconnected from your expenses for a little while. Luckily, because we're not just kind of building the tech and hoping it's really valuable one day, we're using the actual process of extraction to both generate large profits but get better at the processing tech and science itself. So unfortunately, yes, there is going to be, probably between 800 and $1.5 million required fairly early. But beyond that, dilution becomes optional, I would say. Debt financing and just internal funding is going to be entirely possible. And as far as your kind of ROI part, I would say, yeah, because of that, from a pure financial standpoint, I would probably look at it as a riskier investment, but I would say the upside is that you could get 50 or 100x, even though you might have been wanting 3.5.
I like the math on that, 50 to 100x, huh? Only an entrepreneur would start with those numbers. That's great.
That's why we're doing it.
Matt, you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, so let's, thank you so much, Cody. Any other questions out there? Anybody have something to provide? Thank you.
I'll jump in.
Okay, Anthony.
Two questions. It seems based on the presentation that you need a significant amount of technical expertise to run the equipment. And so given that it's mobile equipment, talk to us about any limitations on the ability to scale up the number of units in terms of needing to have such highly specialized skill sets to run them, number one. And then number two, talk to us about your thought about moving the equipment around and the downtime that you have traveling from site to site, setting up, breaking down, versus locating in one place and being able to run 2-3 shifts to get continuous use of your equipment.
Sure. On the second part, like one of the things we like about the modular units made out of like a shipping container, for example, is that they also work totally fine as stationary if we want to bring the biomass to them, but we can still build them at the fabrication site one at a time and then truck them into place. My co-founder Sean is on here. He was having some bandwidth issues, but if you want to kind of address that first part of the question about the technical expertise of the employees.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. The technical expertise is high for the labs now. They're basically labs with moving glass and hot parts, and chemists run them. The idea for these is they're going to be kind of plug and play, where you might even be able to leave them at the farm and let people just load it in. This is just the very first step of the whole consumer product production process, but it's the step that makes it shelf stable. So the first thing you're going to do is just extract the important cannabinoids and terpenes out of the biomass, and then it's stable in an alcohol solution. And you bring it back to your giant factory somewhere in a with a low cost of production place out in the desert or something, and you can finish the distillation and putting it in cartridges or whatever else where you might need a little more engineering infrastructure. But the idea is that this is something that's commonly used in the wine industry, kind of mobile crushing, mobile canning, these kinds of things. In lots of other industries, it's pretty common to roll in something that a producer only needs for a certain amount of time. They use it and then it goes somewhere else, during the harvest. Roll into a state where things just opened and you're ready on day one. You don't need to build a factory in the state that just opened up.
Thank you. One more question here. I want to bring John in. John, any thoughts on this from Green Coast Capital?
I would say that my question is, what is the international opportunity? My experience in dealing with a family, and I don't know if you can hear me properly, so I apologize if the camera is off. Yes. But my question is, what are your international opportunities? I belong to a family office out of London, right? And one of the things that they look for, and these are extremely wealthy people, they're looking for businesses that can scale globally. How would you answer that?
Well, effectively what we do is we build manufacturing technology.
Right.
So the exact business model, 5 years down the line and in 30 countries, I would be a little premature for me to guess, but whether it's licensing the tech to large factories or standing up, bigger manufacturing concerns in different countries, both seem possible. What we definitely don't expect the future to be is international shipments of hemp biomass, when you can get about a 10x reduction in weight and volume by extracting it first.
So can I infer from your comments that you have a cookie cutter model that could be adapted to other continents?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great question, John.
They're in shipping containers. They can be there in 3 days.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. The international aspect is certainly one that is not too far out. A lot going on there. Hey, Polar Extracts, thanks for the time of day, guys. It's been lovely hearing from you. Some great questions, and have enjoyed following your company.
All right.
We'll circle back to you guys in a little bit. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Okay, this is going great. We have such a good group here. I just wish we all had more time. Geez, there's so many great minds, and even these founders know it, right? So that's a testament to the work that Brad and everybody put together here. Next, we have MyCureAll. Elaine, can you join us, please? I think we might have Elaine coming in, but hey, how's everybody? Oh, good.
I just got let in, so thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, so nice to be with you today. We look forward to hearing about your business.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So let me try to switch to, are you able to see my screen right now?
We can hear you.
Okay, are you able to see my screen at all or no?
Not right now.
Not right now. Okay, so let's see. My technical difficulties are continuing.
I know the feeling. Oh, gotta go off video again. Gosh.
As long as we don't get Zoom bombed here, we'll make it okay.
Yes.
Not over yet.
Okay, how about now?
Yes, hello.
Okay, great. So moving along, that's perfect. Okay, I'm just gonna have to move a little bit because of the technical difficulties we had previously. So MyCureAll is a healthcare technology company. Our mission is to bring physical, social, and financial relief from the opioid epidemic and really accelerate the acceptance of legal and medical cannabis into the mainstream healthcare and insurance system. So we really look at ourselves as a solution to a lot of different things in the cannabis world. I am very sorry. I'm still getting through my technical difficulties. So the current method of prescribing cannabis is inadequate. And really, when we started MyCureAll, we quickly realized that we should focus on that platform for all medical cannabis. Our app enables patients, physicians, dispensaries, and insurance companies to work hand in hand to achieve a natural solution to pain, anxiety, PTSD, nausea, fibromyalgia, and just a plethora of a lot of conditions. Through our patent pending technologies, CannaMeter and CannaMeasure, doctors are able to identify and recommend specific strains and cannabinoids for qualifying conditions and presenting symptoms. Dispensaries are able to better manage inventory of various cannabis strains while providing effective care based on patient needs. As a matter of fact, we are currently testing the beta version of our app in 2 dispensaries in Pennsylvania. Insurance company will be able to save money by reimbursing for medical cannabis versus paying for the highly costly opioids, and then the associated cost from the opioid dependence. We're utilizing our treatment plans that empower to reduce symptoms and increase functioning in society. And obviously, patients will be receiving the correct strain strengths for their medical conditions, allowing for safer and more effective treatment, allowing them to actively participate in their wellness through targeted and consistent treatment plans. Our app regularly checks in with patients to track, analyze, and guide that treatment. So here is Jacques, who had a little bit technical difficulty introducing CannaMeasure and CannaMeter.
So I'm back. I just wanted to talk about the CannaMeasure first.
Your presentation screen, full screen?
It is.
Yes. How's that?
No change. Click on your view, the view tab, and view, I think it's in there, view full screen or something like that.
So back to everything. Okay. I think we're gonna have to stay where we are because I'm afraid that we're gonna make it worse.
No
technically challenged. A little technically challenged there. So I just want to go back to the CannaMeasure quickly, and I don't know who heard me over the music. So with the CannaMeasure, and that's really first before the CannaMeter, the patient interacts with a baseline of 3 symptoms are assessed based on qualifying conditions. Patients ask about the strain based on batch number and form of ingestion. Patients rate their symptoms prior to using the preferred medical cannabis from 1 to 10, and through a patient-friendly interaction, rate those symptoms post-intoxication. All symptoms are reported with a 15% or greater reduction are recorded for the patient and presented to the doctor, dispensary, or insurance company with the permission. We record the patient's cannabinoid profile, currently only active with THC and CBD, but we have the other profiles in the back. The other cannabinoids are there. We then take this and make an objective data, still recording just the THC and CBD levels, and we use it and record it for the patient's database. All symptoms reduced by 15% or more are transferred to what's called a CannaMeter. I'm gonna go back to the CannaMeter. So the CannaMeter, what is a CannaMeter? The back end of the CannaMeter, as I explained before, is where we have the database. It's 357 meta-analysis studies that help us aggregate the data and positive or negative effects of the strain with the cannabinoid properties on a particular qualifying condition. And this is ultimately the recommender for the doctor or dispensary based on qualifying condition or particular strain. Thank you. We turn it over to Elaine again.
Okay, so Mathew discussed previously the market opportunity in the cannabis space, and I'm sure everybody understands what's going on in the cannabis, how it's imploding right now. So U.S. legal cannabis sales are set to more than quintuple to 41 billion by 2025. 33 states, Washington, D.C., and several territories offer medical cannabis as a legal treatment option. Adoption of cannabis as a pharmaceutical product for treating medical conditions, plethora medical conditions, and including chronic pain for the elders is really expected to boost the demand. The global CBD market size was valued at a little over $3 billion in 2018 and is expected to go up to $22 billion by 2026. And the global market for non-opioid will be expected to grow to $31.8 billion by 2024. Obviously, we're using apps and smartphones to make it easier for our healthcare professionals to access patient information and diagnose diseases. Looking at the revenue streams really for our medical app, we're looking at the current medical marijuana cardholder market and the cannabis users in our target states. We're targeting 4 states right now due to compliance issues. We're planning to roll and be within every state where cannabis is legal in the next 3 years. We're also looking at the patients that are currently on a consistent opioid regimen and other conditions, as well as we're looking at patients with chronic conditions and symptoms. When we're looking at the total market, even in the 4 states that we're targeting right now, that's New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Florida, we're looking at almost 23 million people that will be able to utilize and enjoy using our app. The projected revenue for our app, and we are being extremely conservative. We are looking at if it's a 5-year projection, provided that only 33 states remain medical cannabis legal and that we capture only 10% of the market, we're looking at our EBITDA to be at about $53 million. And again, that's provided that everything stays the way it is. Some of the questions that came up during our during the chat after we did the presentation is about our competition. So we do obviously have some of the competition on the market, Leafly, Relieved, Strain Print. However, we do have a very different competitive advantage. First of all, we're the only ones that are providing the standardized set of protocols, and we're really the only ones that are streamlining the recommendation process. For a provider, we are also we are offering them the self and the recommender assessment for the patient for different mental health conditions, as well as the opioid use disorder, PHQ-9, RODS, GAD, PTSD. We'll be sending reminder messages to recommenders in a dispensary. We're developing very personalized and specific treatment plans for patients. Patients will be able to view their assessments and their CannaMeasure results. And we're creating an insurance claim that with our CannaMeter and CannaMeasure that patient can submit for reimbursement. We're currently raising $750,000. Majority of money will be used for marketing. We do want to continue software developing and obviously bring other states on board. And $150,000 will be going towards operations.
So strategy, we're looking at acquisition, financial buyers, investors, and IPOs. Telemedicine, teletherapy, expanding our services to the global market, electronic prescribing systems for cannabis, licensing of the CannaMeter, sales of data insurance companies, MTM, medication therapy management, growth of targeted medical advertising, social service and social research. And with that, I want to introduce our team. And I just want to say that I'm very proud of this team, and we are proud to have a diverse and multidisciplinary team that is well versed in the cannabis industry as entrepreneurs. And with that, we thank you both. We thank you all.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you guys very much. That was wonderful. Who should we have to ask a question? Is there a particular judge that you want to hear from?
I'm not sure who still wasn't called on, so let me just go back to the screen and stop sharing my screen. Okay, so.
How about we bring Nick Easley or Brent Johnson in?
Okay, let's go. Let's do. Actually, Alan Stone, I wanted to see if he had any questions.
Okay.
Alan, you're muted.
Is that better now?
Yep.
Okay. So and you have a great background, you and your partner and your team. And is your app currently working? Is it in development or is it working now?
It actually is working right now as a web app. So if you go to our website, MyCureAll.com, you can enter into the web app due to different HIPAA requirements. We wanted to make sure that we tested like that. And then we will be ready to move on to the App Store.
I see. And how much money does it take to get it fully developed for the?
To fully develop, so we're looking for another $100,000. About 50 of it will be going to go to the App Store.
I see. And is the company in revenue yet currently?
No, we're not in revenue yet.
Okay. And what is the valuation of your placement?
Current valuation is $6 million.
Okay. And it was a convertible note, I think I read.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add something to that.
Thank you, Alan. We look forward to seeing your report on this company.
Yes.
I just wanted to say the app is functional, it's workable, it's past MVP. Please go to our website to use it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll try that out. Maybe time for one more quick question. Nick or Brent, do you have something for the company?
Matt, can I add something about insurance for this and reimbursement, which is very key here?
Yep, David, we're here.
So as a healthcare practitioner, someone used to own multiple physical therapy clinics, a couple pain management centers. You mentioned about billing codes. How far are you away from potentially developing your own ICD-10 billing code for this? Or is there a backdoor channel to parlay this with another ICD-10 code? An example, like laser therapy. When laser therapy came out 10 years ago, there's no code for it, and you had to bill it through electrical stimulation to get that insurance reimbursement. So how far are along you with that process? Because if people can get reimbursed and submit the claim to the insurance company, that's really going to increase your revenues.
Absolutely. Okay, hang on 1 second. I'll put Jacques on to discuss the ICD
So
codes.
with the back end of the system, the ICD codes are connected to the qualifying condition, and we can always build on those qualifying conditions as the profession evolves very easily. So we established that we knew that the ICD codes would be needed for billing. And so that is already part of our system at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for.
Thank you.
Hey, Mathew,
Who's joining us? Hello.
Yeah, we hear you, Mathew.
Hello. Okay, great. Losing some technical difficulties as well. Excited to bring Sturges in. Sturges has been in the industry for a long time. Manifest 7 is a business who a lot of us know. Sturges, thank you for being here. Looking forward to learning about your business today.
Sturges, I think we lost Mathew there a little bit, but go ahead. You are currently live.
If you have Mohammad up next from Natur Bazaaz.
That's correct. Let me just jump in here real quick while Mathew reconnects. So we do have Mohammad Hassain, CEO of Natur Bazaaz. If you could please introduce yourself, and we will put your screen live, and we'd love to see your presentation.
Thanks, Ian. First of all, I'd like to show my gratitude to Brad Turner for giving me this opportunity to represent some businesses from Colombia. As you all know, the Colombian Latin America chapter has been of a big hype from the recent 5 years, and there's been little traction into the industry. And there have been specific reasons for that. It's been impacted deeply by the war on drugs, as you've studied the human rights reports from New York, that there've been so much deep impact, especially on those poor farmers who were just for their survival, for their livelihood, were cultivating marijuana or cocaine for that matter. And eventually they were tied up between battle of the state and regulatory bodies. Today, these are the people who have been the most impacted. The people who are most impacted by war on drugs were these poor farmers who were just trying to survive, and eventually got caught up in the process of war between the guerrillas, the war on drugs countries, and the regulatory bodies. So let me start by introducing my company, Natur. Natur is a Colombian company, a startup focused on niching the entire fabric required to create a successful Colombian chapter, cannabis chapter in Colombia. We started off almost 2 years ago before I came from India. So my main background is in the textile sector from the industrial hemp side from India, and working with my associates, Bombay Hemp Company, we've been successful in advocating legalization in one of the states in India, and I'm currently also pushing for a joint venture with with another state in the south of India. So with that in progress, I jumped into Colombia to be able to share my knowledge and explore the opportunities here, especially in the touching the plant sector. So currently, it's not just Natur. Natur represents more than 10 companies from Colombia, and we're seeking capital mainly for transformation facilities, customized, to be frank, because we've burnt our hands with Chinese equipment before, and that's been a big problem, that most of them who've started businesses here with very little capital have jumped into microprocessing units, which have failed within 6 months to a year without any repair options available for them. So our role as a company has been to niche this fabric to be able to establish ethical business model through the cannabis. So let me quickly start sharing my screen if it's possible, and jump to my presentation. Okay. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we see it. Right?
Okay, so let me go to presentation, and here it is. We call ourselves a future-oriented company, fostering biosustainability through ethical business practices. So the tagline is quite common to many companies, not new, but we are actually doing it. I'll tell you how going forward. Being a startup focused on biosustainable products and services, our main objective is to fight against petrochemical products. We've seen that the amount of damage it does to the climate, it does to the planet, it has done to us as the whole collective human being as a race is unreprehensible. But we can try at least to compete and bring back what nature has given us through its gifts, which in this case is products directly from land. So we focus on some really critical and really important and unique and revolutionary concepts. That's basically conscious capitalism, which has been a term of really dedicated importance in the quite few years. Then socio-economic equity, not social equity. I'm focusing on socio-economic equity, so I'll give a little bit details on that. Then biosustainability, a term, but I'll tell you exactly in terms of what we are doing for that. Biomanufacturing, which is not very popular. Very few companies, which we know as of now, are doing biomanufacturing, which involves a lot of microbial processing and reduces use of chemicals from 10 to below 10%. Then a profit feedback loop, which is created in order to target the low-income stakeholders in the company or the entire supply chain. So to put everything in a nutshell, we're focusing on creating a supply chain from the seed to sale. Going forward, our vision, when I started off in India, as you all know, we wouldn't be sitting here if my ancestors did not write down or discover some of the great benefits of these special plants, be it the cousin marijuana or cannabis sativa, the hemp plant. So based on some of the information that I took from some of the great saints and people from India, some of the great healers who've been working on forest medicine from quite some time, I was inspired deeply by the impact plant medicine and plant-based products had. And with that, I want to do something better. So advocacy of hemp has been one of my major concerns in India. that I'm still working on. And with that, the commercialization part of my life and my journey towards biosustainability started from Colombia. So in order to be successful with our vision, we are trying to develop this business, which is diversified. Let me specify again, we are not just focused on extraction of cannabinoids or plant extracts, but we are also based on plant-derived products, which focus into various domains. And we'll tell you how we are exactly doing this going forward. Our team, as you can see, I'm not more than 5 years of experience. I don't have a lot of experience, especially on the commercial side of the sector, because my experience has mostly been on the spiritual side. It's mostly been on the spiritual side. It's been on the textile side from my experience. And with that experience that I carry with industrial hemp, I needed mentors. And I've always sought, being from a family where seeking advice has always been a part of the culture, I've always sought people who are more experienced than me, who've been in the industry, who know tip to toe everything, starting from farming all the way to sales. So we have really good mentors, especially senior Mr. Antonio Romero, who's been more than 40 years in the agro-industrial processing and production in Colombia. Mr. Ronald Coques, who's been more than 20 years in the hemp industry and medicinal marijuana industry in the European and LATAM chapters. Then Leonardo Smales, who is also a serial entrepreneur from Australia, who's working on some extremely revolutionary products developed with cannabis. And we have lots of associates who are helping us develop this project because, as I've told you earlier, I'm quite new to the space. 5 years is not much of a time. People have spent more than a decade and still find that they don't know enough about it. So to quickly summarize what we're working on, we're working towards development of different businesses in these 5 sectors. So therapeutic phytochemical extraction. In this case, we're dedicating mainly or emphasizing mainly on the hemp side. So extracting CBD, Delta 8 THC, Delta 9 THC. And we're focusing on cultivation units. So that's going to be a separate sector of the business. Then hemp-based product chain development here, we're focusing on paper. We already have spoken to one of the biggest paper manufacturers in Colombia. And whenever we get sufficient funding to bring our manufacturing units here, they'll be ready to run a joint venture pilot with us, eventually leading to toilet paper production. That's the main target of the hemp-based product chain that we're working on. Then medical tourism. So far, we have a few companies that have already worked on ecotourism associated with therapies. So technically, it's therapeutic tourism, where people come down to Colombia to these specific pristine places, stay there for a week on a holiday, on a spiritual and a medical journey. And we're working on some revolutionary education systems, which revolves around blended education system. So we'll come to that later. But for now, our main dedication has been towards the cultivation side, in which we've made some really excellent progress. Then considering the conceptual and proof of concept development of hemp-based product and the biomanufacturing of these products. Then also with extraction part, to be frank, we are not experts. That's the reason why we're seeking help from Capna Fabrication, as many of you might have heard about them. They're from the United States. David, their chairman, is helping them draft or customize extraction unit for Colombia, specifically for the strains that we are currently developing in Colombia. And in terms
Thank you, Mohammad. That's fantastic. We need to get wrapped up here. If you'll make one final point, and we'll bring in some questions for you.
Okay. Just to put this in a nutshell and summarize, we're building businesses, and we're building them by corporate friendship. Let me be very emphatic on the word corporate friendship. There is no necessity for a merger and acquisition. These models are old. People trust me to the level that they help me survive here a year by giving me and my company money without asking a penny back. That's the level of trust we have with the people here in Colombia. And they entrusted us to present this entire conglomerate of projects to people who might also bring that level of mutual trust to bring not just money, but also their support and patience to help us develop this industry here in Colombia.
Thank you very much, Mohammad. Well, your 5 years is sort of like, we all think it's dog years. So that's actually 35 years in cannabis. So makes you a little bit experienced. We're glad to hear what you're working on. And we all need more toilet paper in today's world. So that's not too bad either. But we got time for one or two questions here. Who might you like to hear from? And then we'll bring in somebody else first up.
Mathew, may I?
Yes, please. John.
Mohammad, you may recall me 2 years ago, May 9th, 2018 in Cartagena. You did a great presentation, and I loved your enthusiasm. And as I recall correctly, you did actually win an award for that. So well done. My question to you is, what have you accomplished in the subsequent 2 years? And I don't mean to be difficult. I understand how challenging Colombia can be, but it would be interesting to see how far you've gone along in terms of meeting your milestones and timelines.
The last time we spoke, we were currently in the process of getting our licenses. So now we already have licenses for 50 hectares of land, and we are working on a potential to expand that to 500 hectares, but not until we have any confirmation of the processing facility under construction. Then we already have genetics in line. So we have tropicalized genetics for the first time. That's a big relief for Colombia, because many of you know, tropical countries have lost their genetics, especially the medical strains and the hemp strains. And it's been a big challenge for the past 3 years for these countries to get back those strains. We've been trying many strains and crosses. So as of now, we already have some strains which we're importing directly from Uruguay, and we are stabilizing them here. So these are 12-hour and 13-hour light cycle strains. That's the level of development in terms of cultivation. In terms of the co-op, we already have 50 hectares of cultivation for cannabis, medicinal cannabis, especially the phyto compound extraction. And we have more than 150 hectares in Uraba, another state which is close to a port towards Atlantic side, which is under process. So they're still waiting for their licenses, but this is for the hemp side. So we have established that much in terms of the ground part. In terms of the extraction part, CAPNA has given us some designs that we're going through to see what works best, because they said they'll design something personalized for us or customized, but still they're giving us some reference to understand what the machine would look like. So that's
Thank you, Mohammad. Appreciate that. Yeah, this is great. John, it's only been a couple of years. He's got a lot going there. I try to get in there before another 2 years go by, it sounds. And unfortunately, we don't have time for another question here. That's been wonderful, Mohammad. Thank you. We'll move forward. I had it a little bit a misstep earlier. My computer froze. Now we have Sturges in. Mohammad, thank you very much. And we'll bring our next company in, Manifest 7. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. God bless you. Thank you. Appreciate you keeping us on pace here, Ian. I mean, it's not a bad thing. These companies are so good and the industry is so exciting. We have a lot of questions. I know we're trying our best, but these guys are really good, and gals. It's really, really good. Sturges, do we have you?
Yeah, I think you got me on audio. I don't know if you can see me yet.
Can't see you yet, but a lot of us know you. So, you know, we'd like to see your face.
There we go.
Okay.
Hey there.
Hey, good to see you, buddy. Okay, take it away.
Thanks so much. So I know we have a limited amount of time. I've got about a 60-minute narrative in a 5-pound bag. But first off, thanks to Brad and his team for giving everybody an excuse to get out of their sweatpants today. I thought actually I'd get off the deck and give you guys a little bit of an overview of what it is we're building literally from the ground up here in California at Manifest 7. Just a little bit of orientation. We've been in business for about 6 years. We started the company in early 14. We were actually an investor first, so we spent 3 years looking at, if not hundreds of companies, before pivoting into an operating model about 3 years ago in early 17 that I'll kind of lay out for you here, literally step by step. And when we made that pivot, we took a different approach. We had kind of a blank canvas and some domain expertise from investing earlier, and we started to build out, rather than focus on cultivation or a vertically integrated strategy, a very focused strategy on the downstream of the supply chain. And the first step in that is basically a B2B business. So this is distribution. That's a statewide infrastructure, licensed distribution centers in all of the major hubs, fully integrated into a full service model. So that includes logistics and transport, literally moving the product, commodity brokerage, facilitating essentially trades between buyers and sellers, bulk wholesale, which is effectively that model, but with inventory risk, wholesale and retail, where we represent brands and sell into the majority of dispensaries around California, and then a variety of manufacturing and professional services that diversify revenue streams, enhance our value proposition, and keep the customer a bit sticky. So if you think about it, our B2B business effectively covers the entire supply chain, from cultivator to retailer and everybody in between. It's a full service model that's grounded by that physical infrastructure on a fully licensed basis. What we realized though was B2C or retail generally has better margins. And one of the things that we kind of looked at initially, because we wanted to stay focused, we didn't want to step too far out of a core competency box, was we realized that on-demand delivery, which is essentially your Uber Eats or your Postmates model, represents the last mile that connects this business to the end user and takes you straight to the front door of the consumer. So on-demand delivery became the tip of our spear with an omni-channel retail strategy to integrate with this business. Once you're in on-demand delivery, it makes sense to be in the brick and mortar dispensary business, particularly in select markets where you need that license in order to deliver. Then you have in-store pickup, which is effectively just an extension of the retail brick and mortar business. That then gives you e-commerce and subscriptions. So curated boxes focused at targeted demographics like women, seniors, and millennials. So all of this integrates into a singular ecosystem across a statewide infrastructure, and tying it together is kind of our key asset, which is 1-800-CANNABIS. So that connects this ecosystem and this ecosystem. That is available right now on web, text, and call center. Very soon we'll have a native mobile app to tie everything together. We'll also onboard the B2B business. And if you think about it, really what we're building in that sense is Amazon.com. So effectively what we built here is a business now that's on a $28 million revenue run rate. We have a pretty limited burn and are tracking profitability in the next 3 months. In terms of projections for the year, the next 12 months, we're looking at about $54 million in revenue. Every operating company basically below this line right now is completely break even or better. And essentially at the end of that next 12-month window, our effective revenue run rate will be about $75 million on the top line and then about $2 million on the bottom. We're roughly about 2 weeks away from getting CSC approval and looking for a listing towards the end of this summer. So I know we have a limited amount of time. Maybe I'll just stop there.
Thank you very much, Sturges. We all miss whiteboards. Thank you for bringing that into the equation.
Well, you also know I'm wearing pants today, so that's probably
yeah,
good.
exactly. Oh man, good whiteboard session. I know we all want to get back to that soon. So thank you for bringing that up. And I want to bring Nick Easley into this conversation. Haven't been able to bring him in yet. I know Nick has a lot of background here. I think you guys know each other. And then maybe follow that with some of Ryan Anson, given his operating expertise. Nick, are you with us?
I am. Thanks so much. And yeah, I'm Sturges. Nice to see you again, at least here virtually. Probably don't recognize me based on this beaver that took over my face here this last few months. Distribution companies are key. If you ever remember, like Las Vegas, a lot of these states, when they first put it in program, people were like, we don't want to do this. There's no profit to it. But when you think about alcohol and like liquor distribution companies, you grow a great beer in California, it's not going to Utah or anywhere else unless you do that. So we saw with clients instantly, like, you have to jump on and control your own distribution. If you don't, that 15% can kill you. You might not get into certain markets. So I really laud your efforts in getting in fast and big. What I also really like about how you explain, like, California is an enormous state. I saw a lot of distribution companies think all of the cannabis is going to be coming from NorCal, instead of realizing those were all capital little licenses. So doing this in the right places in the state, I think that's a really big kind of value. For where most of the production's happening, are you noticing then like Monterey, Salinas, Santa Barbara Unincorporated is like being major hubs for you? And then like, what's your current kind of ask? Like, how much do you need? What's your current valuation?
Sure.
Go over that for me here, please.
Yeah, sure. So basically this side of the business on distribution we feel is pretty mature. This is up and generating organic revenue at a pretty good clip from a growth perspective. From an infrastructure perspective, we maybe have one hole to fill, which would be in the desert. And that would probably be an opportunistic acquisition, particularly as we kind of come out of this crisis and look for more distressed assets. But in terms of functionality, B2B is really up and running and mature. We started here. And so from the hub perspective, kind of the long haul backbone network, we think we have the right nodes in place, absent maybe that one. On the delivery side, it's pretty robust as well. I mean, we basically cover now, from a retail perspective, about 80% of the population in terms of penetration and reach. But the way that I look at delivery is a lot like cell phone towers back in the late 90s. You know, you may have the ability to access, say, San Francisco from Brisbane, but having that cell phone tower directly in the middle of San Francisco gives you better response time, that gives you better customer retention, and ultimately helps you build the business, you know, much quicker and with a lot more customer loyalty. So the hubs actually are more proliferated on the retail side with delivery, as opposed to the larger CapEx items on distribution. We're pretty much through that. And by the way, any property that we bought that's in the distribution infrastructure, we did in a purchase leaseback approach. So we actually stretched all of the dollars out of the real estate and put them directly into the enterprise to help drive revenue and ultimately get to profitability.
Thank you, Sturges. Thank you, Nick, for that question. Ryan, do you have a question? I want to bring you in as an operator here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And I'll be clear that operating in Massachusetts and operating in California are so remarkably different, especially on the home delivery side where we're medical only, and the economics really don't make sense considering you need 2 people in a car and you can only have a small amount of inventory in your car that's prepackaged. So very, very different, which I would have a lot of questions about around your multi-state strategy if there is one, but I certainly understand the appeal of focusing on California with this model. My first quick question is just clarification to make sure I heard you right. Did you say that you have $75 million on the top line and $2 million on the bottom?
Sorry, I was running out of time there. So right now, off of the April month, we're doing about 27.5 million in run rate. And our net loss is roughly about $350,000 on that, with about 150 employees. For the next 12 months, we're projecting 54 million in revenue, and we'll be we'll basically be at a break-even point for that 12-month period. If you take
operationally, you'll be. Okay,
no,
regardless
that
of
consolidated.
effects?
That consolidated. We're already operationally break even basically across this entire spectrum. So we have some costs, you know, related to our listing and some additional things that we've been doing up at the parent level. It's about just under $3 million in about 3 to 4 months to actually hit the cash flow break even point at the consolidated level.
Okay.
Great.
When I look at these distribution deals, I often realize that the amount of cash that goes through your books can be quite large, whereas the cash that's actually represented by your efforts is de minimis. And so really, and I still don't quite understand it, but I want to ask questions that will be helpful to the 150 people on the call, and happy to follow up with a dynamo like you later. It's really impressive what you're building. So I'm going to ask 2 questions. One, for the audience, why go into brick and mortar at all? And don't answer yet, because I'll give you a little background on it. And then second question is, if you can comfortably, given that this is being recorded and there are lots of parties in the room, but I'd love to know how you see this playing out over the next 3 to 5 years, when a lot of this looks a lot like pitches I heard from Ease at ever multiplying valuations over the course of the past 5 or 6 years, and now they're ultimately vertically integrating. So if you could give us those 2, why brick and mortar at all when 50 or 60% of California opts for home delivery already, and compare yourself to another distribution, real dynamo behemoth, to understand how you're going to make this play differently.
Sure. And just quickly, the numbers I gave you, because I get kind of the merchandise value versus the revenue, the numbers I'm giving you are revenue. And just to put this in context, this entire ecosystem was built over the last 3 years with less than $30 billion in capital. So we think we've been pretty efficient on that. In terms of the first question on the brick and mortar, there's a couple different reasons. In the first instance, and understand our retail strategy is not similar to MedMen. This is maybe 4 to 8 stores across the state that serve a very tactical purpose in supporting basically this omni-channel strategy on the retail side. And in the first instance, though, the gating issue is, can you get a delivery license in a market? And there are a number of them, San Diego, for example, where you can't unless you own the brick and mortar. So having the brick and mortar is kind of those tent poles on the retail side unlocks delivery. In Santa Ana, our first dispensary here in Orange County, it gave us delivery across the entire county. We moved that asset millions of dollars in top line just in the first couple of months of running it by virtue of that. Strategically, when you think about omnichannel, basically your storefronts become revenue generative mini distribution centers. It's kind of like walking into a Banana Republic. When they check an iPad, they're looking at warehouses across the infrastructure, but they're also looking at another 1,200 stores for whatever item it is you're looking for. So that's part of it. The other is customer acquisition. One of the difficulties in distribution, frankly, across this entire spectrum, is getting to profitability. Where can you squeeze efficiency out of the model? Well, if you have the brick and mortar and a loyal customer base, particularly if you're acquiring it, that becomes a very efficient way of capturing clients or customers on the delivery side as well. The whole point is this becomes internally synergistic, and that's kind of the underlying premise is this is integrated. These are not standalone silos. Our brick and mortar business drives delivery revenue, frankly, and in a cost-effective way.
I get that. My last question, then I'll cede the mic, is I've not seen a cannabis company in the last 6 years run through the growth of their business without hitting points of distress. And so I'd like to know, what is the one single kind of sleeping dragon silo of your business that if you needed to cut everything else, you could still succeed?
It would be, I would keep, well, that's a Sophie's choice. Once distribution gets to critical mass, which is basically where we've gotten it to, the revenue becomes a lot more accretive and profitable. And frankly, we can drive this in a much more empirically substantiated way. We know, for example, about $500,000 in dedicated inventory finance turns to about $20 million in top line revenue. A lot of this really exists to support a value proposition here. We have a direct-to-consumer value proposition for our distribution clients. We can put them in our dispensaries, we can put them in driver delivery vehicles, we can put them on our platform and into subscription boxes. So that helps raise the margin on a consolidated basis, but we did that partially to kind of cover or at least help absorb the deficit period of building the monolith that frankly no one in California has been able to economically build out yet. So we're cresting there. So if I had to make a choice, I'd say keep the distribution. I think that has a bigger strategic long-term value.
Thank you very much. Love to follow up.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sturges. I think we're out of time for questions, but let me make a note here, which Mohammad did a great job of. You have a chat box here. You can propose other questions, whether you're a panelist or a judge, or whether you're just in the audience. Please do that. And then if you're a founder of a company and you presented, use this as an opportunity to talk to the judges a little bit more. You can see some people responding in there now and interacting with the community. So please do that. Are we having fun yet? There's a lot of good companies here. We've got some good questions too. I know a lot of our judges are dying to ask more, and I apologize we're not able to do more, but we want to run through these here. So why don't we bring in our next company, Arnaud, longtime friend, done some really interesting things in the space, and curious to get the update. Arnaud, how are things going? Tell us about the business. I know there's going to be a lot of questions here.
Well, as usual, I was going to start with my French accent, but I know you all know that I speak perfectly well English, so I'm going to continue with my American accent. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you, Brad, for putting this together. It's a wonderful opportunity. So we've been actually doing a lot of work recently, and I just want to make sure. Are you guys seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Basically, a lot of the questions we get is, you guys do everything with regards to vaping, but I think one important thing that we need to do to establish is we produce and sell vaping hardware. Now, we do it in very innovative ways, and most importantly, focus on quality and safety. As you may know, I'm also chairman of the ISO standards on vaping products, as well as chairman of the European Commission on vaping products. So heavily involved in the regulatory aspects of things. One of the, why is this not switching? There you go. So our basic revenue drivers is serving MSOs, LPs, extractors, brands with cannabis vaping hardware. We have a range of common off-the-shelf products like cartridges, like 510 batteries that we provide full customization options for. But we're also able to recreate full devices like the device on screen right now, which was created for TerraSend. One of our biggest game changers is the consultative client services that we provide. We do not only go into these clients and provide them with hardware. We provide them with assistance throughout the entire process. We can advise on formulation. We do a lot of SOPs for our clients for filling, for capping. We bring together the ecosystem around vaping and are able to help them solve their issues during the production stages. Oops, there we go. Our main market and our main message, as I emphasized in the beginning, was really quality and safety. The reason we are able to provide this is through our team on the grounds in China and our rigorous quality control and our powered by Blinc system. Through that system, we are able to provide full traceability on the products with unique serial numbers, and that API is made available to our clients so they can then put on their websites, enter your serial number here and get all the information. Going down the road and looking more at the medical side of things, this is going to be a request in terms of regulators. We're also actively engaged in creating the regulation around vaping products and make sure people are getting safe products. All of our production is done in ISO certified facilities. We control that entire supply chain, and that is our big differentiator compared to competition. We control everything from raw material to end product. This is what enabled us to be operational during this crisis. The Blinc vape, the vaping hardware market is basically around $480 million right now. We have a great opportunity here to expand our market penetration, starting with Canada. Canada is one of our biggest growth drivers. Why? Health Canada and the entire Canadian government is actually doing things correctly. And I'm sorry to say this, but here in the US, you can put out a vaping product in literally a couple of days. It makes no sense at all. People are using these products and are putting the aerosol in their body. Why wouldn't we treat these products and make sure that the materials that are used in these products comply to FDA CFR standards, for instance, or are completely done with stability testing to make sure there's no leaching? Why is everyone using copper or what the Chinese call lead-free materials and not stainless steel, for instance? Those are questions that we try to answer in the most positive ways. Today, 60% of our revenue comes from Canadian companies because we are one of the only players that is able to provide that level of detail in terms of compliance and quality control for all of these products. We also work with the different provinces in Canada, as well as with different states like Colorado, like Massachusetts, here in the US, to define that regulation and make sure that we put out, as an industry, safe products to consumers. Some of our clients, we just signed a big partnership with Valence, with TerraSend, with MediPharm. Some of our legacy clients here in the US, like Parallel, Calyx Peak, Green Revolution, Superette. We serve basically MSOs, LPs, brands, and processors, and provide that vaping hardware. We are the picks and shovels of the industry. In terms of finances, we went from 1.1 million in revenue in 2018 to 4.1 million in 2019, and are projecting 10.9 million for 2020. One of the biggest factors and one of the biggest testaments to having built this entire supply chain in a very resilient and redundant manner is how we've been doing in Q1 2020. We have booked $2.7 million in Q1 2020. That's multiplied by 4 compared to last year. To date, and I just got the number before doing the presentation, we have booked 3.8 million in purchase orders today. That's not even half of the year. So as you can see, we're well on track to hitting our numbers this year. We're currently doing a bridge to our Series A. This was led by Equitas Partners Fund. Thank you, Andy, for all the hard work you've been doing and putting us in the right track. It's a $1 million convertible note, 25% discount to our Series A at an 11.25 million valuation. We have already raised 25% of that and broken escrow prior to COVID. Of course, that has slowed everything down moving forward. And we have a complete VC level due diligence package available for anyone interested in investing in Blinc. I try to make it very short because I like to spend more time on questions than presenting. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Arnaud. Really appreciate that, man. So good to see you. It's a fun, really fun business. I want to bring in Adam or Brent, who we haven't been able to speak to much yet. Either of you guys have a question?
Arnaud, how is the COVID affected the order? What your orders have looked like for the last 8-week period?
COVID has actually really helped us. I hate to say this, and it really sounds bad, but surviving through the vaping crisis as well as COVID and having that redundancy in our supply chain was really, really important. The way we work it is we have 4 raw material manufacturers for every raw material we use, and we are not linked to one assembler. We work with 4 different assemblers. So we're able to pivot as soon as there's an issue in manufacturing. We were able to ship out product the week after Chinese New Year and after the COVID outbreak. So that has really had a positive impact in terms of sales. In terms of clients, we see and are seeing a lot more clients that instead of placing a 2 million piece order, are going to be placing smaller orders and ordering more frequently. We actually ask them to do that rather than taking in $2 million pieces straight away, because they're just going to sit on the product if it doesn't sell. And that's not good for the product. It's not good for the reputation of their brand. And it's not good for our reputation either, because mostly like disposables, if you let them sit for 6 months, the self-charge of those products is an issue.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Arnaud. Brent, are you there? I want to ask you, get a question from you, given the fact that at the end of last year had a little bit of a vape situation. Many people think it was devastating. It really wasn't. It was about a month and a half of sales. It didn't have that big of an effect, but it was still an issue. Arnaud, I know you had to work through that, but Brent, from a legal perspective, you have any questions on that?
Yeah, that's one thing, Arnaud, first of all, great presentation. Appreciate joining in here, but I didn't see anything around IP. Is there anything? I know you guys are making a lot of great products. I know you're using some software there. You talked about some different processes. Is there any IP that you guys are developing that's proprietary?
Our IP is on the Powered by Blinc process. It's the process itself of being able to provide from A to Z traceability and visibility on the entire supply chain. To give you an example, using one of our serial numbers, we're able to tell you which worker touched your product at which factory and at which raw material supplier. That is the core of our IP. In terms of vaping devices, we have 3 different projects we're currently working on, and have spent most of our time building this sustainable business to then be able to branch out and work on 3 different innovative technologies and different technologies than what's on the market in terms of vaping.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah, investors always like IP if you can get it.
So I actually, I have a question too. And first I'd like to tell everyone here, right off the bat, actually some investors of us that we represent have already invested in the Blinc group. And currently we have several more investors actually doing their due diligence right at this time, especially after their Q1 reporting. So kudos to you, Blinc group, for that, and Arnaud. But the question is this, though, is let's go back to the vaping crisis, because there's a prefixed idea that everyone got hurt during the vaping crisis. And also people don't understand the magnitude of also having international sales. Could you talk about, 1, is vaping going to go away domestically or internationally? And 2, why has the Blinc group been so successful during this vape crisis? Because it seems like other companies got hit, but Blinc kept on growing, which I know is a key point for some of our investors why they decide to invest in you.
Thank you. Yes, the vaping crisis has actually helped us. We have been historically a little bit more expensive in terms of products, and not really geared towards the people who just really want to save 1 cent on a cartridge and potentially put their consumers at risk. So this vaping crisis kind of shone a light on the issues. Now, of course, it's not all due to the hardware, but it at least emphasized the importance of having control over your supply chain and understanding what the materials are used. It also emphasized the fact that we need more research. One of the aspects that I'm pushing really hard right now, for instance, with the Science and Policy Committee in Colorado, is introducing emissions testing. Because testing what's in this product, in the oil here, is great, but this changes states from oil to aerosol. What needs to be tested is that aerosol. You can have, and we've already seen this in certain oils that are non-detected with pesticides, those pesticides turn into volatile organic compounds in the aerosol that can then endanger the consumer. So we're really, really pushing on that testing and compliance side. And I think the vaping crisis just illuminated that and kind of showed people that, hey, vaping is safer. It's harm reduction compared to smoking because there is no combustion, but we still have to be really wary about what's going on and need to do our due diligence. Again, this is the only industry where people can put products out without doing 3 years of research.
Yeah.
We have 10 years of vaping experience behind us and have created the vaping equation. So Brent, as well, to your point on IP, the vaping equation is the mathematical model of vaporization that allows us to create all of the devices specific to each of our clients' oils.
Thank you, Arnaud. And David, great question. Good to know you have some investors in the company. Hope you remain unbiased, but this is a great presentation by Arnaud for a vote. So thank you for spending time with us, Arnaud. We look forward to circling back with you in a little bit.
Thank you very much. I'm going to put my contact info on the chat if anyone needs to.
Yeah, let's please use that chat to continue the flow. And by the way, stay with us if you're out there. This is, we've got another great company, and then we're going to circle up and calculate some votes here. But we appreciate you all staying with us. It's almost 4:20, so you have to at least stay until the end. We're going to pivot over now to Dr. John. Dr. John with iPill. We'd love to have you in. And following that, we'll have a couple of questions. Alan, people that haven't on the judge side had a chance to ask as many questions, please make sure you get a couple in here. I know the audience would like to hear from everybody. So Dr. John, can you take it from here? Thanks for being with us.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for staying for this last presentation. I'm a physician. I've been 28 years in chronic pain and pain management. I have learned so much about vaping. So I got to admit, I was educated today, and I hope I can educate you about the iPill platform. So I wanted you to remember something before I start, and that's the ATM at a bank. If you can remember that at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a little bit of hint as what we're really doing, and this is really a hint for what I'm doing. So we're a patented platform. We're trying to solve the uncontrolled access to controlled substances, opioids. And the issue is a child-resistant cap. You open it, and you can give everyone a pill. 1 in 4 overdoses now involve children and teens. It's very costly. Overdoses, total cost of society, $69 billion a year. In the hospital, opioids are triple locked, and dispensing is supervised by nurses. At home, there's nothing. You have a child-resistant cap, and you can get all the pills. 28,000 people die a year. Under COVID, more people are going to die. 1% of employment is equal to an increase in 3.5% of overdoses. My solution is the iPill app and the iPill dispenser. So here's the app. Ooh, there you go. There's the dispenser. So it's a hardware solution that's going to become a software company. The software is the iPill app. It is for making sure that only the prescribed person gets access to pills at only the prescribed dose. The dispenser actually destroys pills, so if you're tampering with it, you can't get pills. And at the end of 90 days, your pills are destroyed. 3.3 billion pills are actually entering our communities every year. That's prescription opioids. How a person uses it, just like a phone. Fingerprint, personal code, facial recognition. They want to use it again, same thing. Fingerprint, personal code. Just like a bank ATM. We have an FDA Innovation Challenge win. We're a breakthrough product. We have patents. We are a Class 1 FDA registered product. And we have pilots. We have a pilot at Rutgers Dental School. We have a pilot at at University of Connecticut and Hartford InsurTech Hub. We have a lot of people. Because I've made this company run on its own, because I've bootstrapped, everyone here is a W-2 instead of, everyone here is a 1099 instead of a W-2. That makes it cheaper for me since I'm paying for everything. I put $500,000 of my own money in. Unit economics, highlight. Our first customer is going to be those under 26 years old. That's because they're the highest abuser of prescription opioids, and they're the ones that use prescription opioids without a prescription. The first year gross margin could be as high as 1.47 million. We run across all the age groups. This is our projected age group for 55 plus, 35, 55, and all the patients at less than 26 years old. So we're looking at a potential that could be about $9 million. Sorry, $9 billion per year. And I said our company is software plus hardware. We start off with hardware, and then we go to software. We go to software because we collect data and we put it in the cloud for cloud computing and predictive analytics, and then population health management. We're in discussions with CVS Aetna. Our return on investment for them is $4.5 billion with an initial investment of $8 million. That's why we're talking to the director of pharmacy. We're talking to the C-level suites at Aetna. Our go-to-market strategy is, again, we go to the patient age population with the lowest barrier of entry, people less than 26 years old. They're the highest user of opioids. They're also the highest user of cell phones. Pew Research says there's 99% of the American population uses a cell phone. Also, to understand how big this problem is, each death from an opioid is related to 119 emergency room visits and 22 hospital admissions. We're going through a revenue model where we're going to flow from the path of least resistance, which is the dental practices are cash-based, and they can make a decision in a day. We're going to rehab centers, and then the pharmacy conglomerates. We have competitors. The average price for a dispenser is about $200. We're at $50, and we actually destroy the pills, and we have active control dispensing. So you can't treat pills with more pills, so we're treating the patient as well. We're using CBT therapy, collecting information on the back end for cloud computing, predictive analytics, and population health management. We have a respiratory biosensor. Most drug addicts use more than one kind of drug. Most people, 2/3 of the population use heroin, fentanyl, pot, alcohol, everything. We stop the distribution of opioids through the app, so you cannot get more opioids from the dispenser. If you're not breathing well, we call 911 for you. So as I said, we're now a hardware company. We're soon to be a software company. And we're looking for 1.5 million for a market launch in Q3 of 2020.
Thank you very much, Dr. John. That was wonderful. Really interesting product. Alan, sorry you raised your hand on the last one. Why don't you jump in here? What's your question for Dr. John?
Very nice presentation, Doctor. How much money have you raised to date to develop your existing technology?
I didn't go out and raise money. I didn't have a patent until October 1st, 2019. I didn't have regulatory clearance till May 8th. So I didn't raise money from anyone, and I didn't do it for a couple reasons. I can do this very quickly on my own, much faster, because I also have a drug development company, and I also program. I also have a software company. So I was writing some of the code myself, and I put the hardware myself. The cost of the device, I bought most of the product online on Amazon, and it's probably about $10 to put together. But I'm selling it for probably $50 because I can get into the market as quickly as possible. I'm trying to make sure 191 million opioid opioid prescriptions are put into the iPill dispenser.
And are you able to scale once you get out into the market? There'll be a lot of demand for what you're doing.
I have Foxconn and Enocon as partners. They have 1 million employees. They make the iPhone. I can make 1 to 2 million units per day. Our factories are in Shenzhen, China, and Chowchilla, Mexico. My distribution partner is going to be McKesson.
That's impressive. What sort of valuation are you looking for on this round?
Because of COVID-19, everything is shut down. Our post-COVID valuation is, I would guess, it's an art, we're pre-revenue. I would guess single digits, maybe 9, 10 million.
And have you explored venture capital or?
I'm starting to do that now because we have de-risked the product as much as we can. We're at the point of doing 2 pilots. Once we get 2 pilots done, we're going to go back to CVS and Aetna and say, now we have our 2 pilots. They have already asked me, how can we get your product into 10,000 pharmacies today? I don't want to do that. I want to scale it, exactly what you're saying, 1 pharmacy at a time until I work out the bugs, and then I'll do 10,000 pharmacies.
Thank you,
It's a
Dr.
nice
John.
picture of the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. Are you up in Marin County there? Or?
I have property up in San Fernando. Let's see, it's in Millbrae, California.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, very nice.
That's great. Thank you, Alan. Anthony, question from you or Nick?
Sure.
Anybody have any other questions?
Sure. What is your value proposition? Right. You mentioned competitors. What's your value proposition beyond price versus your competitors, or maybe price is enough for it?
Each death, okay, so the answer to the question is the value proposition is I'm saving lives, reducing expenses, and improving care at a very inexpensive price. So if you're looking at the value exactly, it's to save lives.
I was talking versus, you said, I'm sorry for interrupting. You said that there were some competitors out there that have similar products.
Correct.
So why would an Aetna or somebody else or a consumer pick your product versus one that exists today?
There's no one else that has a patent to destroy the pills within 30 days or upon tampering, because no one else has that. And I have 5 patents around it. The other reason why is because I'm using 2-point authentication, fingerprint and personal code. None of the other competitors use that. They only use 1 point.
Yep.
Authentication.
My last question before I let somebody else take over is, it seems like your product has, the application of your product is 98 to 99% outside of cannabis, whereas everybody else here was more focused on cannabis. I'm curious why you started with this audience to raise your capital.
Number 1, I'm cheap, it's free. Number 2, with cannabis, people use other drugs. So I'm protecting the patient from the opioid that can combine with cannabis. 2/3 of people use a multitude of drugs. You can't just say you're using pot only. People usually drink. I mean, when I used pot, I drank and I used other things too.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's an interesting question there. Thank you for that, Tony. Nick or Brent or Adam, anybody else have another question before we wrap up the presentations today?
I would just kind of say, John, thanks for the presentation. I mean, you did exactly what I want to see on any pitch, be it cannabis real estate, you know, a vape product or anything like that. You exactly who you are, what you do, how you do it, what makes you unique, how you've protected that uniqueness, how much capital you need, how you're going to deploy that, and what your current valuation is, and also being flexible on that. You know, with our ancillary fund, we look at a lot of these sorts of pieces, and I love hearing a pitch where it's can like do something to change the world, and like how people, you know, interact with each other in safety. I mean, opiate endemic has driven a lot of people to our industry. That's been one of our major like strong points in getting legalization across, you know, I mean, the United States. What's one thing that you would think though, like to kind of tie it back to like everything that we focus on and do with cannabis, like you said, you know, piggybacking off that last kind of comment there from you, Anthony, you know, what are some applications that this could be to get us a little bit more involved in how this could help our industry? For example, from cannabis, for either reducing opiate deaths and consumption there while also monitoring other cares and symptoms. And then how could we get more behind a product like this, you know, as part of like a cannabis therapy treatment?
I think two things really. You know, in 28 years of practice, if I was to say that I supported cannabis, I would be shot by my colleagues. So I actually believe that what you're doing with cannabis is most important, because you can't really overdose on pot. It takes a lot of smoking. You can overdose on opioids. So personally, my feeling is that there's many reasons for pain. So there has to be many treatments. My colleagues say that the problem is opioid pills. So they treat it with more pills. But you have to make a conscious decision to take those pills. You have to use your mind, your cognition to do those pills. Why not use pot? You know, I don't treat pain just by an opioid. If a person has anxiety and has pain, I treat the anxiety. I treat the sleep. I treat that. What actually helps anxiety and sleep the most? Pot. So we would work together. I just can't put my MD behind you. I can put my name, but you know, I still have a medical license, and it's not totally kosher because, but you know, you have my John Sue without the MD.
Thank you, John. Nick, appreciate that. Any final questions? We're going to move to voting. If not.
I got one real quick.
Okay.
So Dr. John, great presentation. I agree with Nick. You hit all the key points. One thing I had a question on is on your revenue model slide. Looks like you're going to hit dental practices first in year 1, and then addiction rehab centers in year 3, and then pharmacy insure conglomerates in year 5. A couple things. Why did you pick that, or pick them in that order? If you had more money earlier, could you accelerate the second and third stage? And it also begs the question that most of us like to exit in 5 to 7 years. And so any acceleration of those phases would probably make it more attractive.
I can tell you're already very sharp, Brent. That was a mistake on my part. I should have put the word concurrently. My best estimate is that I'm working on all 3 concurrently. I said that I'm actively talking to CVS Aetna. I'm actually talking to 2 addiction treatment centers right now, one in Tarzana, one in Colorado. They have 14,000 patients and 15,000 patients respectively. So their sales cycle is longer. That means that I have to go concurrently, but the end, I bet you in 3 years, I'll get their contract. With the insurance companies, I have to get CPT codes through CMS, HCPCS codes from HHS, and a UDI number for the FDA. That takes about a year and a half. So in order for me to make it reimbursable and make sense for the insurance companies, you know, they have 90,000 employees. In 3 months, I've gotten all the way up to 1 step below the C-suite. So I figure it's going to take 3 to 5 years to make it palatable for people. I'm making it longer so I don't promise as much, but I can deliver more. If you want to get out in 3 to 5 years, my best guess let's try it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. That was wonderful. Guys and gals, we're going to move over to Ian. We need to do some voting. This has been great. Thank you so much. Ian, can you jump in and tell us what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So each of the judges should have received already a link in their private chat window to vote. So we ask you to go in there and do that now. It'll only take you a couple of minutes. And I think we'll just allow for a few minutes here today to get everybody to vote. And I guess while everybody's voting, very quickly, can I get a confirmation from the judges that you guys do have that voting link? Okay, fantastic.
Also,
so,
we're about to launch a poll for the audience to do an audience selection.
There is one for the audience. Zach, do you have that one to put up there for the audience? Oh, there we go. I think it's up now, right? Yeah, I see the audience voting. So audience, please do go ahead and vote. Give this a couple of minutes. Let me make, while everybody's voting, let me just make a few closing announcements, and I'll turn it back over to Matt to talk about the results there. So number one, I'd love to thank all of the speakers, judges, and presenting companies, and of course, each one of you out there in the audience that attended today's medical cannabis speaker and investor pitch competition. And I'd like to give a very special shout out to the person most responsible for bringing us all here together today, Brad Turner, the CEO from Cannabis Investing Forum. Brad's very humble, but I'll tell you, he has over 3 decades of experience working with Fortune 500 and startup companies, providing business development, capital raising, marketing, sales, and technology development services. Please do go check out the website at cannabisinvestingforum.com. And if we, Mathew, are you seeing the results of the voting? And before we do anything, I just really want to get a confirmation from our judges that each of you's been able to vote.
Unfortunately, I don't have a link.
John, if you look in the chat, it's in the chat. There's a link there. So go
Matt,
find
I'll get you the result.
It'll link it to you.
Yeah, you may have to scroll up for that link. It came in at 4:29 if you're seeing multiple chats.
I'll look out for it. Thank you.
And Ian, where do we see the results? Is that there yet?
Oh,
good question, Matt.
Well, I saw someone write this, but glad we're not mailing them in. We're going to get a nice.
And then somebody's voting for you too.
We're going to announce the audience choice in just a second. The judges will take 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay. Well, while we're doing this, guys and gals, just want to thank you all for your time. I know Ian did that as well, but the panelists were amazing. A lot of great companies, a lot of great judges here. So thank you, each of you, for putting in some time and donating your time and efforts here. We're having some polling come in now. I'm not sure which I can report yet, Ian, but is this the poll that represents the audience, or is this the judges poll?
The one on screen is the audience.
Okay. Wow, we have a lot of votes here. Is this our final number?
Looks like primacy versus recency. Wow.
Okay, well, we'll talk about the audience's pick first. Ian, can you confirm that they're all in? Are we good to announce?
Yeah, those are finalized.
Okay, thanks, Zach. Yeah, we're good. Those are the final audience results.
Okay, Zach, thank you for that. So we're going to announce the top 3. I guess that's the way we'll go about this. In 3rd place, representing 15% of the vote, we have Polar Extracts. Thank you, Polar Extracts and Zach.
Oh, shucks.
In 2nd place, with a total of 25% of the vote, we have Peter Vogel and Leafwire. Peter, thank you. And with our 1st place from the audience, representing 27% of the vote, we have the Blinc group. Arnaud, thank you. The people's favorites, the people's choice is the Frenchman. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, audience, for participating as well. It means a lot to us that you stay in and participate here because, again, we, as a collaborative, we are so much stronger. So thank you for staying with us and casting your vote. I know the companies here really appreciate that. These people put their lives into this, and so do the panelists and judges, actually. So thank you very much.
And also, we do have a networking room that I think is going to be opening up momentarily for everybody to come in and join.
Oh, good. Okay. And how about our judges' votes? Do we have all those in?
Yeah, Matt, did you get that Google spreadsheet?
Let's see. Sure did. And we have our results here. This is really kind of fun here.
Matt, while we're waiting, just want to say thank you. Nice job navigating this through difficulties of technology and the law and the questions. So good work.
Oh, thank you. It's technology is, you know, not my strong suit personally, but trying to take all these relationships that we all have and get the most out of them is certainly something that that we think we accomplished today. Thank you for saying that very much. The top three we have from our judges, Cody, Adam, Nick, David, Anthony, Adam, Mohammad, Brent, Alan, John, everyone, thank you for your votes. Without further ado, number 3, third place from the judges is Polar Extracts. How about that? We end up having, oh, I'm sorry. This is like one of those missed the Oscars openings. We actually have in third place, a different third place. Zach, you're doing a lot of work helping us out here, but unfortunately, you're not third in this poll. Manifest 7 is. Manifest 7. Sturges, thank you very much for your presentation and your whiteboard. We all do miss those, and that was a phenomenal rendering of your business. In second place, we have Peter Vogel, Leafwire. Peter, thank you. That does equate to what our audience also thought. So thank you for that, Peter. We love your platform. I write on it all the time. I really do enjoy that. And in first place, we have the Blinc group, Arnaud, the Frenchman, taking home the championship trophy. Thank you, Arnaud. You do have a wonderful business. It's been really nice knowing it over the years. And for MyCureAll and Natur, iPill, really appreciate all of your work. I thought everybody brought something interesting to the table. Brad and Ian, thank you for bringing a diverse group of businesses to the table. As investors, that's what we all want. We actually do want to see a lot of optionality here. I think we were able to accomplish that. So Arnaud, a double winner. Thank you very much. You deserve it, friend. Everybody in here, please, please, please collaborate. Please reach out. Everybody that was a part of this, I know will accept some type of message from you if you have follow-up questions. We only have so much time on these types of formats, but God bless everybody. We're just beginning. Stay encouraged, believe, support each other, and please come to Arcadian with anything we can do for you. I promise you we will be here if you reach out.
Also, a couple of just very quick wrap-up announcement. We are going to be putting this presentation up on the cannabisinvestingforum.com, so you will have an opportunity to review anything that you may have missed. And I think the chat is going to also be up there. And also, I'd like to let you know that Cannabis Investing Forum has another event coming up on June 30th. This is a hemp investor event. There we go. There's the slide for that right now. So please do check in at cannabisinvestingforum.com for details about this next upcoming event. And really thank you so much to all of our judges, guest presenters, audience members, Mathew, everybody that put in so much time to be here today. Can't thank you all enough.